Chapter 1748. I have something good for you. Yang Chun hugged Lady Fenghua's elastic body and said with a smile, I was afraid that it would dissipate after a long time, so I specially came over. I also have good news for you. Lady Fenghua buried her head deeply in Yang Chen's neck and smelled the refreshing scent on his body, as if she was intoxicated by it. After Yang Chun finished speaking, she immediately followed with a smile. Is there a convenient place? Yang Chun asked casually. This was the territory of Yin Yang Demon School, so he naturally listened to Lady Fenghua. With old Hai here, it's convenient everywhere. Lady Fenghua replied with a smile, and then said coquettishly, Master, I want to go home and take advantage of Madame's absence to pamper me. Yang Chun smiled slightly and communicated with Old Hai. Old Hai's meaning was directly transmitted. Don't worry, this place is already shrouded in an illusion. Don't worry. Yang Chun was more at ease with Old Hai's guarantee. He looked around and released the Dragon Palace, which transformed into a treehouse. Then, he carried Lady Fenghua and flashed into the Dragon Palace. Lady Fenghua was of the water attribute, so Yang Chun directly brought Lady Fenghua into the Water Dragon Palace. After entering the Water Dragon Palace, Lady Fenghua let go of Yang Chun a little. She stood on the ground and breathed in the abundant spiritual power that was several times denser than outside, with an intoxicated expression. Lady Fenghua had just probed, and Yang Chun directly brought her into the Dragon Palace. Obviously, the ladies were not there, so in a sense, Lady Fenghua could be considered the mistress here for the time being. I also want a room here. After feeling the aura, Lady Fenghua put her pretty face on Yang Chun's face and whispered in his ear, There's a room for you. Yang Chun replied without hesitation. In the future, the rooms here will be separated according to the attributes of the 5 elements. The original rooms for Shan Shan, Xiaoxiu, Ling, Junkie, and Wu Shuang will be moved to another place. If you want, you can choose Junkie's room first. Really? Lady Fenghua didn't expect that Yang Chun would really agree to her joke. Moreover, he directly gave her Tao Junkie's room, which made her very surprised. There was a room here, which meant that she was one of the family members fully recognized by Yang Chun and Gao Yu. Lady Fenghua never expected that she would have such treatment one day. Unexpectedly, it became a reality when she thought it was a dream. Believe me, there will be more and more rooms in our house. Yang Chun hugged Madame Fenghua's slender waist and motioned her to look at the slightly different color of the Fire Dragon Palace not far away. Not to mention you, even the apprentices you have received will have their own rooms for each of them. Of course, Lady Fenghua saw the 2 palaces that were very close to each other. She snuggled up to Yang Chun with a face full of happiness. After enjoying for a while, she said faintly, I'm so happy, really. As the dignified elder of Yin Yang Demon School, you shouldn't be so happy just because you have a small room, right? Yang Chun couldn't help but tease Lady Fenghua. This is too embarrassing for Yin Yang Demon School. I'm happy, and it has nothing to do with the sect. Lady Fenghua leaned on Yang Chun happily and didn't care about Yang Chun's teasing. After Yang Chun clearly heard her own words, she added, They are the same. Master. Behind Yang Chun, dozens of people called out in unison. This surprised Yang Chun. He turned around and immediately saw 30 beauties lined up neatly. All of them were looking at Yang Chun with happy and touched expressions. They probably heard what Yang Chun and Lady Fenghua said earlier and knew that they would also have their own rooms here. Lady Fenghua found 30 maidservants for Yang Chun. These maidservants all cultivated the 1,000 glamorous spiritual technique. After they gave themselves to Yang Chun, their hearts were firmly tied to Yang Chun. Because they cultivated late, before Yang Chun and Lady Fenghua ascended, they specially took care of them to train in the mortal world. He didn't expect that all of them had ascended today. The good thing you mentioned, don't tell me they're here? Yang Chun looked at the girls and was delighted. Humans weren't plants and trees. How could Yang Chun not be moved when so many maidservants had their hearts set on Yang Chun? Reuniting after a long time was naturally a joyous occasion. It had been almost 200 years since Yang Chun ascended. With the wonders of the thousand glamorous spiritual technique and Yang Chen's outstanding nurturing, their cultivation had long reached the level where they could ascend. However, they remembered Yang Chen's instructions and stubbornly trained in the mortal world for another 100 years before they ascended together. They had just ascended for less than 10 years. With the care of elder Lady Fanghua, they barely managed to integrate into Yin-Yang Demon School. They didn't expect Yang Chen to come to them personally. It's great that all of you are here. I was afraid that this good thing would dissipate, and there wouldn't be a share for all of you in the future. Since you're here, let's enjoy it together. Since the dragon essence was starting to dissipate, Yang Chen naturally didn't mind his own people using it. He immediately took out the gourd and instructed them to prepare for seclusion. In the Dragon Palace, there was Elder Hai outside and Yang Chen inside. There was no need to worry about safety. Yang Chen asked Lady Fanghua and the girls to sit in a circle while he sat in the middle. He circulated his qi to force out the dragon essence and sent it to the girls' noses and mouths so that they could absorb it as much as they wanted while cultivating. When the girls heard Yang Chen say that the dragon essence would dissipate, they didn't dare to delay and immediately followed his instructions. If their lover, Yang Chen, said that it was a good thing, then it was definitely a good thing. Since the beginning of the mortal world, Yang Chen was famous for being able to find good things. The girls had never doubted this. This cultivation took more than a month, even longer than the time spent by Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. The girls' cultivation technique was the same. This myriad colors spiritual technique wasn't afraid of impure spiritual power. What was difficult was the state of mind. With Yang Chen by their side, the girls' thoughts were the most clear. With the help of the dragon essence, the effect of one seclusion was comparable to the past 100 years. The improvement of spiritual power was inevitable. Lady Fanghua became a grade 8 human immortal expert, the same level as Tao Junkie, who ascended hundreds of years ago. Her divine sense also rushed to grade 1 heaven immortal. The maid successfully entered the ranks of grade 3 human immortal, and their divine sense also reached grade 1 earth immortal. In terms of spiritual power cultivation alone, the 30 beautiful maids had only ascended for less than 10 years, and they had already caught up with Yang Chen. This didn't include the impure spiritual power that Yang Chen would bring to them this time. The improvement of their cultivation also made the girls understand that what Yang Chen said was true. This was indeed a good thing that made people envious. Their own sweetheart had good things and did not forget to personally deliver them from thousands of miles away. This kind of affection made the women feel touched. The business was done here. Next, it was time for Yang Chen to understand the lives of the girls. Chapter 1749. Yang Chen and Lady Fanghua had reunited once 100 years ago, so they were familiar with each other's situations. For the past 100 years, Lady Fanghua had improved her cultivation with Elder Hai's help, and she had also improved her status in the sect. She had been living a good life. What surprised Yang Chen was his 30 mates. When they went out to train in the mortal world, they all chose an unexpected location, the palaces of various countries in the mortal world. There was a saying that went, "It's good to train in the palace," but the palaces of various countries were the place where all kinds of conspiracies and plots were prevalent. The disciples of the devil's sect were like fish in water when they trained in the palaces. Just a few decades of training in the palaces made the improvement of one's mental state several times better than training in the outside world. What touched Yang Chen the most was that their main purpose in going to the palaces was not to train, but to learn how to serve the emperor in the mortal world. In their hearts, they wanted Yang Chen to enjoy more distinguished and thoughtful service than the emperor. This was their original intention of going to the palaces. As for the improvement of their mental state, it was a pleasant surprise. The dignified Grand Supreme human immortal experts of Yin-Yang Demon School had turned into ordinary palace maids, sealed their cultivation, and quietly lived in the palaces, learning various skills, cooking, sewing, and making utensils, also that their lover could enjoy a better life in the future. Even a person with a heart of stone could not help but be moved. As a person involved, Yang Chen felt even more deeply. The thoughts of the girls made Yang Chen feel that it was definitely worth it. Not to mention anything else, just the thoughts of the women made Yang Chun as sweet as drinking honey. Next, Yang Chun truly experienced what it felt like to be an emperor. Although there were only 30 beautiful maids compared to the thousands of people in the palaces in the mortal world, they looked very shabby. However, these 30 beautiful maids were all human immortal experts. Not to mention thousands of ordinary people, even 10,000 or 100,000 people could not compare to the 30 of them. In addition, the place they were in right now was no worse than the imperial palace in the mortal world. To put it bluntly, one was the South Sea Dragon King's Water Dragon Palace, and the other was the unknown Fire Dragon Palace. The combination of the two dragon palaces was more powerful than hundreds of palaces in the mortal world. Yang Chun had tasted the delicacies made by Gong Sun Ling, drunk the wine made by Sun Qingxue, drank the fragrant tea made by Shi Shanshan, and wore the robes made by Gao Yu. However, although these things were exquisite and meticulous, they were all made according to Yang Chen's taste and habits. Not everything was made according to luxury and luxury. Compared to ordinary cultivators, this was already an incomparably luxurious enjoyment. The emperor in the mortal world didn't have much of a cultivation base, but in terms of enjoyment, he wasn't any worse than the Jade Emperor in the immortal world. There were all kinds of rules. It was simply too much for one's eyes to take in. Just the food alone was an eye-opener for Yang Chun. Eating was eating. Yang Chun had eaten delicacies that could make people swallow their tongues, but he had never enjoyed a feast with dozens of dishes. Those dozens of dishes that looked exquisite were really for looking, not for eating. If he couldn't help but move his chopsticks, he would be laughed to death by those fastidious fellows. Next, when it came to eating, there were two maids serving on both sides. Yang Chun didn't even need to move his hands. As long as his eyes looked at a dish, the two maids would naturally take apart and place it in front of Yang Chun, and personally deliver it to Yang Chen's mouth. The only thing Yang Chun had to do was to open his mouth and chew and taste. In a meal, on average, a dish that could be eaten would not exceed 3 chopsticks and would be replaced immediately. They would not stay for long, and the dishes were still being served continuously. According to the introduction of the maid next to him, there would be 108 dishes in each meal, and the best parts would be selected for Yang Chun, and the rest was just the process of enjoyment. The two maids who cooked alone had been imperial chefs for a full 100 years in dozens of imperial palaces in the mortal world. The study of dishes from all over the world was more detailed than that of Gong Sun Ling. The two masters of the Deshang stage devoted themselves to learning to cook for 100 years. There was almost no dish in the world that they couldn't cook. Not to mention the chef, even the dishes were carefully refined, which could bring out the essence of the color, fragrance, and shape of each dish. Jade, porcelain, bamboo, wood, anyway, it was related to the taste of the ingredients of each dish. After the careful refining of the master level, it was exceptionally exquisite. Any plate taken out, it was estimated that it could be regarded as a magic weapon by those cultivators in the mortal world. It took almost more than an hour to eat a meal, and the feeling of eating the delicious food made by Gong Sun Ling was completely different. It was not that there was a difference in taste. Relatively speaking, Gong Sun Ling and the two maids were equal. However, Gong Sun Ling had always been in accordance with Yang Chen's appetite, making the most ordinary dishes the most exquisite and showing the true meaning and plainness. The strength of the two imperial chefs was in the main dishes, which were extremely luxurious. Whether it was the materials or the techniques, they were the best. The most different feeling was the process of eating. One was a light drink, the other was an imperial banquet. One was to regard Yang Chun as her lover, giving him the most intimate taste. The other was also to regard Yang Chun as her lover, her own master, to give him the enjoyment of an emperor. The difference in origin and starting point gave Yang Chun a completely different taste. During the banquet, there were many wonderful songs and dances by the maids, all carefully rehearsed for Yang Chen's enjoyment. One must know that these were 30 human immortal experts who came from Yin Yang Demon School and cultivated the myriad red spiritual technique. Yin Yang Demon School specialty, the Heavenly Demon Dance, was used by them. making Yang Chun dizzy. Of course, Yang Chun was purely appreciating it, and only he had the ability to really treat the singing and dancing in the hall as a performance to add to the fun. With this level of singing and dancing, not to mention an emperor in the mortal world, even an ordinary earth immortal expert might not be able to resist the temptation of the heavenly demon dance performed by so many human immortal disciples of Yin Yang Demon School. After the banquet was the bath. Many beauties served Yang Chun and Lady Fanghua. Yang Chun did not even need to move his hands, and he could enjoy the most fragrant service. Such a series of service made Yang Chun so happy that he forgot about his duties. It was no wonder that everyone was willing to be a fatuous emperor who indulged in wine and women, if they could really enjoy this level of enjoyment. It seemed like a good choice to be a fatuous emperor. Even Yang Chun had this kind of feeling. It showed how much these women cared about him. The more it was like this, the more Yang Chun felt the affection these women had for him. Although they were deliberately trained by Lady Fanghua to be like this, now Yang Chun had completely accepted them. Anyway, Yang Chun already had the reputation of having 4 wives and 7 concubines. No, 5 wives and 7 concubines. So what if he had a few more beautiful maids? Chapter 1750. In the territory of Yin Yang Demon School, Yang Chun lived a luxurious life. Every woman in the Dragon Palace was obedient to him and even worshipped him, which was an eye-opener for Yang Chun, who thought he had seen all the prosperity of a mortal world. Cultivators were all devoted to cultivation. Few people would pursue this kind of extreme enjoyment unless there was no hope of improvement. Sometimes they would give up. But to be honest, ordinary cultivators, no matter how unruly they were, would rarely take the initiative to come into contact with mortal emperors. One had to know that mortal emperors all had great providence on them. If they weren't careful, they could bring about a calamity to cultivators. Ordinary cultivators would avoid them, let alone experience their lives. Consciously experiencing this completely different feeling, Yang Chun and Lady Fanghua had become the local emperor and queen in a small territory. Even Madame Fanghua was not completely an empress, but a concubine who was competing for favor. All kinds of sweet voices were euphemistic. As long as it could please Yang Chun, she would not hesitate to use it. For a whole 10 years, Yang Chun was like a fatuous emperor, lingering in the bushes of flowers, wine pools, and forests of flesh, enjoying himself and forgetting to return. Apart from the bottom of his heart, Yang Chun still kept a trace of the bottom line of cultivation. He let the women do whatever they wanted. In this trip to the Dragon Palace, except that Yang Chun did not experience the kind of power that could cause the world to change with a command, everything else was like a powerful emperor. This kind of emperor state of mind, even in Yang Chun's previous lives, was the first time he had experienced it. What followed was an unprepared spiritual sense improvement for Yang Chun. The process of improvement was very sudden, but was also within Yang Chun's expectations. The girls wanted to make Yang Chun feel better from the bottom of their hearts. That kind of mentality emerged in Yang Chun's heart like a mirror. Compared with the predicament of being chaste in his previous life, there was no way to go to heaven and no door to the earth. The strong contrast would definitely bring about some changes. He was already a 3rd stage heavenly immortal. Yang Chun didn't even dare to believe himself. Everything was like a dream. But reality told him that he had really advanced by a small realm, and his state of mind felt even more open. Most of the people who claimed to be open-minded were people who had never experienced it before. They didn't understand the true taste of it, so it was easy for them to be so-called open-minded. It was completely different from Yang Chun, who had truly obtained it and then said that he could let it go. The difference between them was like a local tyrant holed up in the countryside and an emperor in the imperial palace. After Yang Chun accepted the 30 maids, he did not forget to teach them the supreme mystery Yin Yang Heart Sutra spiritual awareness dual cultivation. The 30 maids were now the same as Yang Chun's other women. All of them were freaks whose spiritual awareness and spiritual power cultivation base were completely out of touch. All of them had reached the peak of the earth immortal realm. In this process, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness should theoretically be reduced. After all, even if a person's spiritual awareness cultivation base was high, it would still be somewhat insufficient to distribute it to 30 people. What Yang Chen didn't expect was that his spiritual awareness cultivation base not only did not decrease, but like his own spiritual power, after experiencing the baptism of the 30 maids, it seemed to have been sharpened and became sharper. This was not the same as condensing and purifying, but another kind of sharpening. The more it was used, the more the spiritual awareness would naturally be in sync with the body. The Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra Spiritual Awareness Dual Cultivation with the 30 maids was to improve the degree of this compatibility. Out of the idea of being able to get as much as possible, Yang Chun also relied on his strong spiritual awareness cultivation of the 3 purity secret art, and his and the women's spiritual awareness cultivation base far exceeded the spiritual power. So he boldly began to transform the Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, so that Yang Chun could carry out spiritual awareness dual cultivation with multiple maids at the same time. Perhaps it was for this reason that his transformation was very smooth. At first, he could only dual cultivate with 2 female maids. Then, after becoming proficient, the number of people slowly increased 3, for the number of people was growing, and finally, he was able to cultivate with Lady Fanghua, plus 30 maids at the same time. After the transformation of the Supreme Mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, the girls also benefited a lot. The difficulty of 2 people working together and more than 30 people maintaining the same mind was on a completely different order of magnitude, and the harvest was also extremely huge. The cultivation method of Yin-Yang Demon School, coming from the demon sect, paid attention to speed but lost in purity. Originally, when 2 people dual cultivated, only the 2 sides could share and exchange with each other. Some things that were not suitable had to be born. Now more than 30 people were communicating at the same time. What was not suitable for you may not be suitable for her. Everyone could take the initiative to choose the part that was most suitable for them to share. After having one more choice, the effect was naturally different. In 10 years, the 30 maids not only improved their spiritual awareness cultivation base by more than a big realm, but even their spiritual power cultivation base also improved by a small realm on average, reaching the realm of the 4th grade human immortal. The speed at which his cultivation rose was simply astounding. At this time, Yang Chun was a little embarrassed. Although he was not inferior to anyone in terms of combat effectiveness, even so many people together, they may not be able to beat Yang Chun. But in terms of cultivation base alone, Yang Chun was the worst one, only in the 3rd grade human immortal realm. Fortunately, Yang Chun knew his own situation. After the absorption and fusion of Lady Fanghua and the 30 maids, the purity of his spiritual power had been improved to an incredible level. He believed that even elder brother Li Cheng was not necessarily Yang Chen's opponent. Well, it seems that I am the one with the lowest cultivation base. I have to go back and cultivate hard. Calculating the time, Yang Chen finally said goodbye to the women. There was no banquet in the world that did not come to an end. All the women understood this truth. Now was not the time for everyone to stay together. The separation was inevitable. Everyone was a cultivator, so they could see it clearly. After serving Yang Chen for the last time, the women quietly lined up behind Lady Fanghua and watched Yang Chun leave reluctantly. Coming out of the land of gentleness all of a sudden, Yang Chun was really not used to it, but he immediately got out of that state completely. There could be all kinds of different experiences in cultivation, but one could not indulge in it. Yang Chun still had this insight. Yang Chen's goal was Chunyang Palace, to be exact, the conch underwater mansion in the Sea of Hatred. After such a long time, presumably Fairy Soft Sound and Fatty Jing had some insights. It was time for them to enjoy the last remaining dragon essence. It was also considered as fulfilling the promise to Fatty Jing, and at the same time, giving his future woman Fairy Soft Sound some benefits. Chapter 1751. You? What's changed? As soon as Fatty Jing saw Yang Chun, he carefully looked him up and down for a long time before asking with a frown. The person in front of him was still Yang Chun, but he didn't know what had changed. He didn't seem to be Yang Chun. It was really a strange feeling. There's no change. I just cultivated a little. Yang Chun gave Fatty Jing a plausible answer, then smiled and congratulated him. Congratulations, Master Jing Hu, a level 9 sky immortal expert. Ha ha. Hearing that Yang Chun was congratulating him on this matter, Fatty Jing couldn't stop smiling. He laughed so hard that many wrinkles appeared on his face. Speaking of which, I still have to thank you. Your wife. Just as he said this, he seemed to think of something and hurriedly changed his words. Fairy. That fairy is really amazing. I told her happy things, and she told me unhappy things. She didn't do anything. She just listened to stories and leveled up. This is the first time I leveled up so comfortably. Ha ha ha. I'm an expert now. You have to respect me in the future. Fatty Jing was now a level 9 Sky Immortal expert and was about to step into the peak of the Sky Immortal realm. In the past, Fatty Jing's accumulation was enough. It was just that his cultivation was insufficient, so he was stuck in this realm and couldn't improve. In his previous life, he only improved because he was captured. In this life, he improved just by chatting with Fairy Qingyin. He couldn't help but be proud. Isn't that because of my guidance? On the contrary, being polite and courteous with Fatty Jing made him unhappy. Calling him brother and talking and laughing freely was the right way to go. Yang Chun didn't stand on ceremony and directly took the credit. What does it have to do with you? Fatty Jing blurted out a dirty word, not caring about his demeanor as a late Sky Immortal expert. But as soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to feel that it was inappropriate and added angrily, Your woman, it can be considered a little related, being forced to admit that his improvement had something to do with Yang Chun made Fatty Jing feel very embarrassed. After all, he was an expert at the 8th stage of the Heaven Immortal realm. How could he not have the help of a human immortal junior? You still owe me a favor. Didn't you say that you would give it to me after I raised my cultivation level? Give it to me. Although he was unhappy, Fatty Jing didn't forget to reach out to Yang Chun to ask for benefits. Who asked him to not let him have enough fun the first time they met? Why do you think I'm here? Yang Chun snorted and said arrogantly, Lead the way. Let's find a suitable place for you to practice in seclusion. Yang Chun didn't renege on his debt and immediately gave him benefits. Fatty Jing didn't have anything else to say. He could only endure Yang Chun's attitude and obediently brought Yang Chun to the entrance of a house. This is your woman's place. This is mine. The house was divided into two. Fatty Jing wasn't afraid that Yang Chun would misunderstand. He directly pointed to Fairy Qingyin's side and then pointed to his own side. Without waiting for Yang Chun's response, he walked straight in. Yang Chun followed him in and took out the gourd containing the dragon yuan. Fatty Jing found a comfortable position to lie down. This was his own cultivation posture. He only cared about comfort, not the effect. In fact, Fatty Jing's attitude was the correct attitude for cultivation. Cultivation should be a happy thing. Naturally, it was comfortable. Little Monkey and the others have already left. They said that they're going out to gain experience. After Fatty Jing told him where Ho Yun and the others were going, he said impatiently, I'm ready. Let's start. A rich dragon yuan entered Fatty Jing's nose. Fatty Jing was a knowledgeable person and immediately realized that this was a rare opportunity. Without another word, he immediately entered a state of cultivation. He didn't have any precautions against Yang Chun. Ever since he discovered that the bracelet on Yang Chun's hand could kill him even when he was awake, he didn't have any precautions against Yang Chun. After a while, Fatty Jing entered a meditative state. Yang Chun saw that there was nothing for him to do for the time being, so he slowly retreated. Anyway, after Ho Yun and the others left the underwater house, Fairy Qingyin should be the only one left here. The chefs lived far away and were very self-conscious. There wouldn't be anyone to disturb them for the time being. This was the right time to meet Zhou Xianying. Zhou Xianying already knew that Yang Chun was coming, but since Fatty Jing appeared first, she was too embarrassed to go out. Seeing Yang Chun walk over, Zhou Xianying awkwardly welcomed Yang Chun into her abode. She even awkwardly helped Yang Chun take off his outer robe and invited him to sit down. Everything seemed very unpracticed. You're back. Zhou Xianying lowered her head and greeted him. Then, She didn't say anything else. Her face was completely red. Ever since Yang Chan said that he would prepare a new betrothal gift for her, Zhou Xianying didn't know how to face Yang Chen. She didn't know how intimate she should be with Yang Chen. "You're back," Yang Chen replied. After staying with Lady Fanghua and the 30 maids for a long time, he naturally had the aura of a master. Talking to Zhou Xianying was as natural as returning to his own home. This is a rare opportunity. Some things will dissipate very soon. Let's finish our business first. Yang Chen explained, and then let Zhou Xianying prepare to go into seclusion. Everything here was ready. Seclusion could be done with just a word. Zhou Xianying didn't say anything more. She brought Yang Chen to the room for seclusion. She sat cross-legged and assumed the posture of 5 hearts facing heaven, waiting for Yang Chen. This time, Yang Chen went all out. He activated all the dragon essence in the gourd and sent it to Zhou Xianying's nostrils. There wasn't much left anyway. Zhou Xianying was a heaven immortal, so it was understandable that she needed more. Under the stimulation of the dragon essence, Zhou Xianying quickly entered a meditative state. Only Yang Chen was awake. Under such a situation, Yang Chen should be guarding them. However, since they were in the underwater abode, Yang Chen wasn't worried about his safety. So, he started to study the gourd that contained the dragon essence. Under normal circumstances, the dragon essence would dissipate. However, it didn't dissipate so quickly in this gourd. There must be something inside that could preserve the dragon essence. What Yang Chen wanted to study was this unknown material. With a thought, the gourd in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness magnified countless times, allowing Yang Chen to see it clearly. The refining method of the gourd looked good. However, it was only good at best. It wasn't good enough to preserve the dragon essence. In other words, the preservation of the dragon essence should have nothing to do with the refining method. At the bottom of the gourd, there was a thin layer of thick purple liquid. There was even a little dragon essence aura on it. It should be the thing that preserved the dragon essence. Yang Chen probed it with his spiritual sense. However, he didn't recognize what it was. However, when his spiritual sense probed into the thick liquid, he felt a salivating feeling. It was as if the thick liquid was something delicious. Chapter 1752. That wonderful taste seemed to be able to directly target his spiritual awareness. Yang Chen didn't even taste it, but his spiritual awareness told him how delicious this feeling was. It seemed to be more fragrant than a new tea fried by Shi Shanshan, more mellow than the wine brewed by Sun Qingxue, and more delicious than the dishes made by Gong Sunling. The fatal attraction made Yang Chen unable to extricate himself from it. There was a voice in the dark attracting himself. "Come and have a taste. Come and have a taste." Yang Chen almost couldn't help but follow the mysterious voice and taste the gourd mouth upside down. At the critical moment, his spiritual awareness, which had been tempered by Lady Fanghua and the 30 maids, shook violently, and Yang Chen instantly woke up. This feeling was not normal. Yang Chen now had the spiritual awareness of the 3rd grade of the fairy immortal realm. Plus, he had tasted many delicious foods. In front of this purple viscous liquid, he still felt like he was addicted. This feeling was absolutely abnormal. Relying on extraordinary perseverance, Yang Chen dragged his spiritual awareness out of this viscous liquid, sealed the gourd, and dared not try it easily again. What was it? It was so tempting that Yang Chen almost fell for it. Sweeping through the memories in his mind, Yang Chen could not find the answer. Suddenly, Yang Chen's heart moved, and Xiao Tian appeared beside Yang Chen in an instant. Perhaps he was having a good time in the Dragon Tower and was summoned by Yang Chen. When he saw that it was not a battle, Xiao Tian was a little unhappy. His 2 eyes stared straight at Yang Chen, and his long body did not move. It looked as if he wanted Yang Chen to give an explanation. "What's inside?" Yang Chen didn't talk nonsense. He directly opened the mouth of the gourd and aimed it at Xiao Tian, asking him to give him an answer. Xiao Tian had the bloodline of Yazi. This gourd was obviously the work of the Dragon Clan. Maybe he could know something. Xiao Tian has been mysterious these years. Since he had the Dragon Pagoda, he had forgotten his favorite to lick the magic weapon and stayed in the Dragon Pagoda every day. Yang Chen knew that the dragon pagoda was definitely good for dragons, so he didn't force it. Xiao Tian should have discovered something in the process of merging the two dragon palaces, right? Yang Chen was not wrong at all. Xiao Tian looked at the gourd and plunged into the mouth of the gourd. It looked exactly the same as when Yang Chen was attracted to the viscous liquid at the beginning. But Yang Chen found a little different. Xiao Tian's body twisted more than a fried dough twist. Stop pretending. Tell me what this is. Yang Chen couldn't help but pat Xiao Tian's long body, and then pulled his head off the mouth of the gourd. Xiao Tian was obviously unwilling to leave and still wanted a lick with his long mouth. It was a pity that Xiao Tian could not break free from the strength of Yang Chen and was forced to separate. Xiao Tian was very angry, and it seemed that he didn't want to pay attention to Yang Chen. Yang Chen was not afraid of his mischief. Could it be that his own monster pet had no way to solve it? Tell me what it is and what it's for, and then we'll split it in half. Yang Chen was very serious about the conditions with Xiao Tian. Otherwise, I can enjoy it alone. This time, Xiao Tian raised his head and looked at Yang Chen. It seemed to be confirming whether Yang Chen was serious. Yang Chen nodded with a very serious expression. Xiao Tian finally confirmed that Yang Chen was not joking. He twisted his body and quickly returned to the dragon pagoda. After a while, Xiao Tian came out with a piece of jade slip and put in Yang Chen's hand. This made Yang Chen very strange. Where did Xiao Tian get the jade slip? It seems that there are still many secrets in the dragon pagoda. Holding the jade slip in his hand, Yang Chen immediately explored it with his spiritual awareness. Sure enough, what was recorded on this piece of jade slip was exactly what Yang Chen wanted to know. At first glance, Yang Chen couldn't help but open his mouth wide. The purple viscous liquid was actually the brain marrow of the adult true dragon plus the dragon crystal of the main body, and then the product was refined by the dragon clan with a certain secret method and integrated into the dragon blood. The dragon clan named it Dragon Soul Fragrance. An adult dragon could only get this little. Dragon Soul Fragrance was of great use to the dragon clan. The most powerful point was that it could be used to send the soul. In theory, as long as there was a little bit after the special refining method of the dragon clan, it was enough for Xiao Tian to put his own life source primordial spirit in it. Once the main body was damaged or died, it could be resurrected by relying on this life source primordial spirit. This was a unique method of the dragon clan, which was very precious. In particular, the material itself required the brain marrow and complete dragon crystal and dragon blood of a strong true dragon. This alone was deadly. There was also the refining method of the dragon clan. Even if a human cultivator like Wang Dongzhu was lucky enough to get the dragon body, it was impossible to refine it. It even had the powerful function of sending the soul, not to mention the trivial matter of preserving the dragon yuan. In fact, the existence of the dragon yuan was actually to nourish the dragon soul fragrance and not let the dragon soul fragrance lose its vitality. Yang Chen knew what was good and bad. He hurriedly sealed the gourd and put it away. The dragon soul fragrance in front of him reminded Yang Chen of the best quality underworld jade he had obtained in the Langya well. After the same unique refining method, the dragon soul fragrance could be entrusted to the life source primordial spirit, but the dragon soul fragrance was much stronger than the underworld jade. The body resurrected by the dragon soul fragrance would not lose any cultivation base. The best quality underworld jade, that is, the resurrected primordial spirit of the dwelling god jade, would be weak for a long time, at least 1,000 years to restore the original cultivation base. Comparing the two, the difference was obvious. Only the dragon clan itself dared to use the corpse of the dragon clan to do this, and only the dragon clan could refine such a magical thing as the dragon soul fragrance. This made Yang Chen strongly suspect that the East Sea Dragon King was resurrected in a secret place immediately after being beheaded on the Immortal Executioner stage. He didn't dare to delve into these things at all. The secrets inside were extremely frightening. In the jade slip that Xiao Tian gave to Yang Chen, there were also some methods of refining the dragon soul fragrance in the later stages. Only through this method of refining could it really have the effect of soul attachment. It was obvious that Xiao Tian took out this thing and wanted Yang Chen's help. After all, Xiao Tian was not a real dragon, and it was impossible to complete the refining. Of course, another important reason was that refining this dragon soul fragrance required at least 3 kinds of dragon fire, and Yang Chen already had 2 kinds of spirit-devouring dragon fire and purple yang dragon fire in his hands. If he added the white fire seed, which was obviously 1 level higher than all the other fire seeds, he would definitely be competent. Unfortunately, now the dragon soul fragrance was only a shallow layer at the bottom of the gourd. At most, it could only satisfy the use of 4 or 5 Xiao Tian. Xiao Tian and Long Xian were both dragons. If they were counted as old people, it was barely enough. Obviously, it did not meet the requirements of Yang Chen to maximize the utilization. An idea flashed through Yang Chen's mind in an instant. If he used the dragon soul fragrance and the dwelling god jade as raw materials, could he refine a new kind of soul attachment magic weapon? Chapter 1753. The Jade Slip recorded the method of using dragon fire to refine dragon soul incense. Yang Chen roughly estimated that if he used this method step by step, there shouldn't be a problem. Speaking of which, dragon soul incense could still be refined as an elixir. In this aspect, Yang Chen had absolute confidence after obtaining the Elder Lord Pill scripture. Yang Chen also had the method to refine dwelling divine jade. After referring to each other, Yang Chen soon had a plan in his mind. Be it dragon soul incense or dwelling divine jade, their basic functions were similar, but the effects were different. However, there was only a small amount of dragon soul incense, but there was a large amount of dwelling divine jade. Yang Chen could learn from them. Perhaps he could use the remaining dragon soul incense and dwelling divine jade to refine a portion of it. The effect would be much better than dwelling divine jade, but it wouldn't be as good as the dragon soul incense. For the time being, Yang Chen had already named this elixir as the spiritual pill. According to Yang Chen's own analysis, the spiritual pill couldn't be like the dragon soul incense that could completely restore one's soul, but it greatly reduced the time needed for a complete recovery compared to dwelling divine jade. If Yang Chen's own estimation wasn't wrong, the spiritual pill could shorten the recovery time of dwelling divine jade from 1,000 years to about 100 years. After the physical body died, the soul wouldn't be destroyed, and after 100 years, it would be restored to its peak. This was simply a great killing tool that cultivators dreamed of. Not to mention 100 years, even 1,000 years of recovery would give one a chance to be reborn. As long as one was a cultivator, they would definitely be willing to do it 100 times. The amount of dragon soul incense on hand was limited, and Yang Chen couldn't obtain it by killing dragons for the time being, so he could only use it sparingly. Fortunately, Yang Chen didn't plan to sell the spiritual pill on a large scale. He only planned to prepare some for the people around him, like Long Yuan. As for other less important people, he could use dwelling divine jade. I'll help you refine a portion of the soul-fostering dragon soul incense. Can you give me the rest? Yang Chen began to discuss with Xiao Tian. Before, they said that it was half and half, but Xiao Tian obviously didn't need that much. With a little more, Yang Chen might be able to refine one more spirit pill. So Yang Chen also braced himself to discuss with Xiao Tian. Fortunately, Xiao Tian only needed one and did not refuse Yang Chen's proposal. However, he still asked Yang Chen to refine the great yin-yang 5-element sword with the universe treasure nurturing art and put at the entrance of the Dragon Pagoda so that he could use it at any time. This request was easy to meet, and Yang Chen happily agreed to Xiao Tian's request. Then he immediately began to call out the profound spirit furnace, intending to refine the soul attachment dragon soul fragrance. No matter what, Yang Chen had to refine the dragon soul incense once in order to find the feeling of refinement and the experience of the refining process. As for whether there would be a problem with the lack of dragon fire, Yang Chen had no doubt about the power of the white fire seed. Anyway, Fatty Jing and Fairy Soft Sound were both in retreat. Yang Chen was not far from Fairy Soft Sound and began to refine the soul attachment dragon soul fragrance. After carefully going through the refining process in his mind and confirming that all the things needed were ready, Yang Chun began to refine. The spirit-devouring dragon fire and the purple yang dragon fire appeared at the same time and began to burn part of the dragon soul incense taken out of the gourd. After a period of time, the white fire seed also participated, and the three kinds of fire seeds began to refine the dragon soul incense according to the method recorded on the jade slip of the dragon clan. A series of materials were added in an orderly manner according to the records, and the techniques recorded in the elderly Lord Pill scripture were also used by Yang Chun in the refining process. Soon, Yang Chun saw the correct changes recorded on the jade slip. The fragrance began to spread in the underwater mansion, and even Fatty Jing and Fairy Soft Sound, who were in meditation, couldn't help but sniff. There was such a performance in the unconscious state, the attraction of the Dragon Soul incense could be seen. The Dragon Soul incense has been completed under the early refining of the Dragon Clan, and Yang Chun is now operating the last step and the simplest step. This process for the current Yang Chun was not too difficult. Primordial Spirit Blessing. At the appropriate time, Yang Chun began to instruct Xiao Tian, letting him join in. Xiao Tian understood the good and bad, and quickly put his own primordial spirit into the medicinal liquid of the profound spirit furnace, and madly output it. Yang Chun could clearly see the changes of the Dragon Soul incense with his spiritual awareness. With the exploration of Xiao Tian's primordial spirit, the medicinal liquid of the Dragon Soul incense began to slowly condense, and soon it turned into a lifelike miniature version of Xiao Tian. This little Xiao Tian was covered in silver, and it was as small as an earthworm. When Yang Chun completed all the steps, Xiao Tian took the little silver dragon in his mouth, and then flew into the dragon tower and closed the door. Yang Chun saw it very clearly. For a while, Xiao Tian seemed to be very tired. He and Xiao Tian were connected, and soon noticed Xiao Tian's current mood. On the one hand, it was tired. On the other hand, it was really exciting, which made people feel contradictory. Xiao Tian's Dragon Soul incense had been completed, and Yang Chun himself was a little relieved. If it weren't for his own technique, maybe by the time he could find the master who refined the Dragon Soul incense, everything would be too late. Without the nourishment of the Dragon Yuan, the sooner these Dragon Soul incense were used, the better the effect would be. After having his own Dragon Soul incense, Xiao Tian obviously had a kind of change with a trump card, and it seemed to be a little different from the previous low-key. It looked a lot more fierce. Perhaps it was because he had an extra life that he had confidence and capital. Next, Yang Chun did not dare to waste time. Without the nourishment of the Dragon Yuan, Yang Chun was afraid that there would be any changes in the Dragon Soul incense. After quickly deducing the process of refining the divine pill with the combination of dwelling spirit jade and Dragon Soul incense in his mind, he began to refine it. In the end, it was still alchemy, and the method of alchemy was also used, but the final finished product was called a pill, but it was completely different from a pill that could be swallowed. Yang Chun had a lot of dwelling spirit jade, and he was not afraid of wasting it. In the refining process of Yang Chun's divine pill, because the Dragon Soul incense had been preliminarily refined by the Dragon Clan, it became an important additive to enhance the effect of the dwelling spirit jade. So most of the refining process was concentrated on the dwelling spirit jade, and the last step was to add the Dragon Soul incense. Every step was carried out according to Yang Chun's ideas, step by step. After the last step was to add the Dragon Soul incense, the three kinds of dragon fire took turns to fight, especially the white fire seed, plus a lot of merit protection, and the pill was successfully completed. The completed spiritual pills were not in the form of round pills. Instead, they were in the form of miniature pagodas. The small pagoda had a total of 3 layers, corresponding to 3 kinds of dragon fire. If you look closely, each layer of the pagoda was entangled by a dragon, with scales and claws. The pagoda was hollow, as if it could be filled with something. When he used his spiritual awareness, there was a feeling of his spiritual awareness being pulled in, which was very magical. Chapter 1754. Yang Chun used the merit chapter to support the refining all the way. According to Yang Chun's theory, there would be no problem. The current feeling of spiritual awareness being pulled also proved the effect of the divine pills. After refining the dragon soul incense for Shao Tian, there wasn't much left. This furnace of refined divine pills produced a total of 16 divine pills. Yang Chun added his 5 wives and 7 concubines, that was 13. Including Lady Fanghua, 14, the maids couldn't get a share. In this way, there were still 2 left. Long Xian carried the merit for Yang Chun, so he had to leave 1 for him, so there was only 1 left in the end. After thinking about it, Yang Chun didn't know who to leave it to. There were too many close seniors. It was not appropriate to give 1 or not. It was best not to let them know. After thinking about it, Yang Chun had a goal. 1 for Big Brother Li Cheng. If others needed it, they could directly use the dwelling divine jade to refine it. After allocating these divine pills in his mind, Yang Chun no longer worried. He soaked these divine pills in oil and stored them, then quietly waited for Zhou Xianying to finish her retreat. Close at hand, Yang Chun could clearly see the face of the original heavenly zither fairy and the current soft sound fairy. The delicate face was not worse than any of his wives and concubines. Shaving off the surly shell, only the elegant temperament that had been cultivated through years of music cultivation was left. A top figure, coupled with a powerful background, no matter who she married, it was estimated that the kid's ancestors would burn incense. But Big Brother Li Cheng actually so casually instructed her to marry him. Although they hadn't married yet, hadn't consummated the marriage, and hadn't even had the time to inform his wives and concubines. But Yang Chun understood that this heaven's favorite already belonged to him, and it was unlikely that he would find someone else. Thinking about it, Yang Chun was a little proud. His wives and concubines in this life, if placed in his previous life, which one of them wouldn't be a fairy that could shake the immortal world with a stamp of their feet? Now, they all became his pillow. As a man, was there anything more fulfilling than this? What are you thinking about? Zhou Xianying's voice suddenly rang out. It was at this moment that she woke up from her closed-door cultivation. After she finished her cultivation, she happened to see Yang Chun smiling as he pondered. I'm wondering what I've done to deserve the favor of so many fairies. Yang Chun replied casually. Then, he raised his head and asked, Did your cultivation level increase? Hearing Yang Chun's initial words, Zhou Xianying couldn't help but feel a little sweet in her heart. Yang Chun still knew what was good for him. When Yang Chun talked about cultivation, Zhou Xianying also became serious. What on earth is this thing that actually allowed me to advance in just 10 short years? The powerful effects of the dragon essence shocked Zhou Xianying. She was also a little worried. Raising my cultivation levels so quickly, will it be unstable? Don't worry, Long Yuan won't have those problems. Yang Chun smiled and gave Zhou Xianying a very certain answer. Dragon essence? Zhou Xianying had been in the spiritual realm for many years and had a vast inheritance. Naturally, she knew what dragon essence was and exclaimed softly. Her previous doubts were all dispelled. If it was dragon essence, then there would be no problem. However, she didn't know where Yang Chun found such a good thing. However, when she thought about how many Dharma treasures on Yang Chun had the aura of the Dragon Clan, it was not surprising that he had some dragon essence. That fatty Jing is really open-minded. How can he face everything with a smile? After saying a few words, Zhou Xianying began to change the topic to fatty Jing. All these years, according to what I've heard from him, there isn't a single unhappy thing. Even when his cultivation level has reached a bottleneck, he still eats and drinks when he needs to. He's so open-minded, a carefree heart and a fat body. Yang Chun replied with a smile, but his eyes were fixed on Zhou Xianying. Being stared at by Yang Chun, Zhou Xianying was a little shy. She lowered her head slightly and said, All these years, other than cultivating and resting, I've been chatting with Fatty Jing. I'll talk and he'll listen, or he'll talk and I'll listen. Unknowingly, my cultivation level has improved. She was talking about cultivation, but Yang Chun could tell from Zhou Xianying's words that she was indirectly telling him that other than chatting while cultivating, she had no other contact with Fatty Jing. Her cautious manner was nothing like the domineering Granny Tianqin from back then. Zhou Xianying's current situation made Yang Chun want to snicker. However, When he thought about how Zhou Xianying had never been so humble and cautious to others, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pity while feeling proud. He couldn't help but reach out to grab Zhou Xianying's small hand and gently hold it. Zhou Xianying's delicate body trembled, and she almost ran out of the door, but she finally held back. The warmth from Yang Chen's big hand and the grip just now made Zhou Xianying's heart feel even more warm. She hadn't experienced this feeling for thousands of years. "Don't worry, I'm here, don't worry." Yang Chen's words made Zhou Xianying have a different feeling. She only felt that the little guy in front of her, whose cultivation level was less than half of hers, gave people an indescribable sense of security. "By the way, you must like this technique." Yang Chen remembered something, reached out, took out a jade slip, and handed it to Zhou Xianying. What was recorded on the jade slip was the body refining technique left by Fairy Chang'e. As long as it was a female cultivator, they would go crazy for it. The surprised expression on Zhou Xianying's face fully showed her love for this body refining technique. After almost reading it with divine sense, she immediately began to cultivate. She didn't care that Yang Chen was beside her and holding her small hand. This scene made Yang Chen couldn't help but smile bitterly, but he didn't let go of Zhou Xianying's small hand. He just felt her delicate skin and smelled the fragrance on her body. He slowly lay down, closed his eyes, and took a comfortable posture to wait. After a long time, a faint sound of a zither sounded in Yang Chen's ears. Yang Chen didn't open his eyes and listened quietly. Two people, one sitting and the other lying, had an indescribable peace and quiet. "Ha ha ha, I have improved again." As soon as the zither finished playing, Yang Chen and Zhou Xianying heard the laughter of Fatty Jing over there. The timing was just right. Yang Chen and Zhou Xianying looked at each other, and there was an indescribable tacit understanding in their hearts. The two smiled at each other, stood up, and walked outside. Fatty Jing couldn't wait to show off in front of Yang Chen, stretching his arms and kicking his legs. When he saw Yang Chen and Zhou Xianying appear together, he suddenly smiled. "Ha ha ha, kid, I am now at the peak of Fairy Immortal, and I am one step away from transcending the tribulation and ascending." With that, Fatty Jing's face turned serious, and he shouted at Yang Chen, "Why don't you flatter me? When I am happy, I will give you a few pointers, and you will enjoy endless benefits for a lifetime." Chapter 1755. He didn't need to speak so formally with Fatty Jing. He could say whatever he wanted to say. It didn't matter how big of a joke he made, especially after he had just advanced to the next realm. He was an expert after all, so he had to have the bearing of an expert, right? Peak of the sky, immortal stage. Yang Chen carefully sized up Fatty Jing and came to this conclusion. Fatty Jing nodded his head proudly. He was very satisfied with his realm. Anyone who reached the late stage of the Sky Immortal stage would be so proud after advancing 2 small realms in 10 years. However, Fatty Jing quickly realized that he really couldn't be proud in front of Yang Chen because the 2 advancements in realm were inseparable from Yang Chen. Consolidate for a few more years, and you should be able to transcend the tribulation and ascend soon. Yang Chen suggested, then changed the topic. "Hurry up and make something good to eat. Ah Ling isn't here, so I can only come here to eat." After being the emperor for a year, Yang Chen found that he had a lot more requirements for his appetite. He really had no appetite for ordinary meals. Although cultivators didn't need to eat at all, Yang Chen didn't want to cultivate himself into that kind of otherworldly state. When he encountered delicious food, he still wanted to savor it. This was exactly what Fatty Jing wanted. After being in seclusion for so long, he hadn't had a good meal. He was the master here, so he immediately went to arrange it. "You stay here for the time being and refine that cave abode." Watching Fatty Jing walk away, Yang Chen reminded Zhou Xianying, "Don't worry about the changes outside. Just cultivate in peace." "Okay." Zhou Xianying agreed in a low voice. Just as she was about to say something, Yang Chen had already handed her a jade box. "This is the divine pill I just refined." Yang Chen smiled and introduced, "It's refined from divine jade, and its effect is a little better than divine jade. You know how to use it, right?" It was very easy to communicate with someone who had stayed in the spiritual realm for thousands of years. Without Yang Chun saying anything, Zhou Xianying already knew what the inhabiting divine jade could do. When Zhou Xianying heard Yang Chun say that the effect of the spirit-focusing pill was even better than the divine-dwelling jade, even though she was already a heaven immortal expert who could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her, a trace of astonishment still appeared on her face. However, this bit of surprise quickly disappeared without a trace. Based on Zhou Xianying's understanding, the man in front of her was her future husband. Ever since they were in the mortal realm, miracles would happen every once in a while. An extra spiritual energy pill was really not something worth making a fuss over. Zhou Xianying naturally knew how precious the divine perching jade was. It could be said that the number of divine perching jade in the entire spiritual realm could be counted on one hand. Yang Chun had given him such a big gift without batting an eyelid. Could this be the betrothal gift that Yang Chun had mentioned? Don't worry, deposit your natal primordial spirit, and then place the spirit-focusing pill in a safe place, Yang Chun instructed. Actually, what he said was nonsense. How could someone who knew about the divine perching jade not know what to do? Keep it with you. After experiencing so much, Zhou Xianying already had a sense of security and trust towards Yang Chun. She immediately made a decision. However, he could not help but feel a sense of warmth from being cared for. This was something that he had felt many times in the past few days. Depositing the natal primordial spirit was very simple. He just had to insert his consciousness into the spiritual energy pill. In a short while, Zhou Xianying completed this process. The spiritual energy pill that contained Zhou Xianying's natal primordial spirit was also handed over to Yang Chun. Yang Chun kept it very solemnly. This was Zhou Xianying's other life. Since she could entrust her life to him, there was no need for any more words between the two of them. Fatty Jing's side quickly prepared a delicious meal. In the conch underwater palace, the three of them were very relaxed, and they ate heartily. However, even though she was enjoying her meal, Zhou Xianying's movements were still as tranquil as ever. It was a delightful sight to behold. In addition to appreciating it, Yang Chun sometimes couldn't help but think of Zhou Xianying's father in the immortal world. How could such a beauty bear to let her be like Granny Tianqin? Although the intention was good, it was really a little cruel to a woman who loved beauty as much as her life. Fatty Jing was also an important figure in Chunyang Palace, and Yang Chun was not stingy in using good things to rope him in. The previous chefs and food were at most catered to his preferences when they first became friends. Now that he took out the divine perching jade, it was a huge gift. Although Fatty Jing looked simple and honest, his heart was as clear as a mirror. When Yang Chun gave him a piece of divine perching jade that was enough for him to deposit his primordial spirit and the refining method of divine perching jade, Fatty Jing knew that his rune that could trigger the heavenly tribulation in the mortal world could not be kept. Fortunately, it was given to Yang Chun, a friend who was to his liking. Fatty Jing did not feel reluctant at all. That room is still under your care. It's safe. After Fatty Jing expressed his intention to give that room to Yang Chun did not refuse, but he did not take it away on the spot. Just leave it when you ascend. In addition, Ling still needs to be taken care of by you. Don't blame me for disturbing you. Before leaving, Yang Chun did not forget to let Fatty Jing take care of Zhou Xianying. Fatty Jing patted his chest to guarantee that Zhou Xianying would not be wronged here. Zhou Xianying, who was next to him, heard that Yang Chun had changed to call her Aing, and she had already lowered her head with a red face. This trip to the conch underwater mansion was really comfortable. None of the things that should be done were missed, and there were more than a dozen divine perching pills. It could be said that it was more than enough. Yang Chun went straight to Long Xian's place in a good mood. He handed another divine perching pill to him and let him deposit his primordial spirit. Together with the one he used, he gave it to Xiao Tian. Hide the good things in the Dragon Tower. Yang Chun gave the divine perching pill to Xiao Tian because he wanted him to keep them in the Dragon Tower. That Dragon Tower could not be entered except for the dragon. so it was relatively the safest place. Originally, Yang Chun himself had the divine sense and the immortal body of the three purities secret art, so he didn't have to consider the divine perching pill. However, when he thought that even if he had the immortal body, it would still take a lot of time for him to recultivate and ascend, it was better to put a divine perching pill in the spiritual world as insurance, so he simply used one himself. Next, Yang Chen's plan was to first introduce a little divine perching jade at the auction and then attract the attention of the major sect. Yang Chen could then discuss the matter of the training place with them. Yang Chen still had a lot of divine perching jade. If he released a little in moderation, he could increase his power to deal with the devil tribulation in the future, and Chunyang Palace could also win more time to develop in the rear. With this goal in mind, Yang Chen went straight to the Sunset Rock and planned to ask Elder Wu Xiong to arrange the auction. He believed that the news of the appearance of divine perching jade would definitely set off another wave of buying frenzy in the spiritual world, and it would not be inferior to the 4th and 5th grade Yinji pill. Chapter 1756. What? A disciple of Chunyang Palace was attacked in Mount Shiping? Yang Chun and Elder Wu Xiong met. Before he could talk about the dwelling spirit jade, Elder Wu Xiong told him the news. Wanbao Tower took over the property of the original Blessing Gathering House, and its branches were almost all over the world. The original friends of Lan Ing were the ones who really wanted to settle down. Now, after a series of training and expressing their loyalty to Chunyang Palace, they had been assigned to guard the place. The entire Wanbao Tower was united, and it could be regarded as a large intelligence organization. Some things were known very quickly. The news had just reached the headquarters of Wanbao Tower. Elder Wu Xiong had just received it and was about to send it to Chunyang Palace when Yang Chen came. Wu Xiong did not neglect and immediately told the news to Yang Chen. Mount Shiping was where the courtyards of the Five Sect were located. Someone actually attacked a disciple of Chunyang Palace here. The disciple who was attacked was not from Chunyang Palace in the mortal world, but a rogue cultivator who joined 100 years ago. Perhaps it was done by a former enemy, but to do it within the scope of Mount Shiping, wasn't it too disrespectful to the people of the Five Sect? Was it just a simple revenge? Or was it a conscious test? It should be known that dozens of fairy immortal elders of the Five Sect had promised to keep Chunyang Palace safe for 1,000 years. In addition to this kind of thing, it could not be ruled out that some people wanted to do something to Chunyang Palace, but they were afraid of those fairy immortal masters, so they made a small test. Anyway, it was not aimed at the mountain gate and industry of Chunyang Palace, but only at a small fairy immortal disciple. If no one responded to this, then they could use this method to slowly attack Chunyang Palace. What was the purpose of doing this? Were they not afraid of angering the fairy immortal masters of the Five Sect who had made a promise? Yang Chen's mind was in turmoil, thinking about the impact of this matter. What about the disciple who was attacked? While many thoughts were running through his mind, Yang Chen directly asked about the disciple's safety. He was seriously injured and was rescued by the disciples of the Green Jade Immortal Island who passed by and temporarily saved his life. Elder Wu Xiong's tone was normal. He calmly narrated, "He will be sent back to Chunyang Palace in a few days. The treatment is up to you." As long as he wasn't dead, there was hope. Yang Chen heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Do you know who did it?" This time, Wu Xiong directly shook his head. There was still no news of the culprit. Perhaps he could find out something from the injured disciple. However, no matter what, making a move on Mount Shiping, a place where the Five Great Sect resided, made people feel that there was a deeper meaning to it. The dozens of fairy immortals of the Five Great Sects had indeed promised to ensure the safety of Chunyang Palace for 1,000 years, but they did not promise that no human immortal disciple would be injured, did they? Could it be that if any disciple of Chunyang Palace was injured or had discord with outsiders, these fairy immortals would have to come forward? Yang Chen suspected that those who made the move were testing the bottom line of the Five Great Sect to protect Chunyang Palace. As long as they knew their attitude, they could make corresponding arrangements. Once the people of the Five Great Sect did not care about this kind of trivial matter, then some forces could probably secretly make arrangements in Linyang River. When the time came, they would launch a blow to Chunyang Palace. It was not necessarily a life and death enemy. There was a great possibility that Yang Chun guessed it was because of interest. In just 200 years of preaching, Chunyang Palace had accumulated such a family property. No matter which force it was placed in, even if it was the Xintian sect, this wealth was a wealth that could not be ignored. At that time, if they couldn't grab the big head, they wouldn't be able to eat the meat. It was estimated that they could get some soup to drink, or it would be the revenge of the Zhao family. The Zhao family had already begun to take action against the Xintian sect. He didn't know what the other sect would do, but if the Zhao family wanted to take action, there was no reason for them to let go of Chunyang Palace. However, this was not a possibility for the time being. If the Zhao family wanted to take action, it was estimated that they would not leave anyone alive. Seeing that Yang Chun was lost in thought, Elder Wu Xiong did not disturb him. He sat quietly and waited for Yang Chun to make a decision. After a while, Yang Chun couldn't help laughing. No matter who it was, he was going to release the Netherworld Jade. As long as the news spread, it was unknown how many people would want to curry favor with Chunyang Palace. No matter who did it, they could not escape death. He believed that there would be thousands of fairy immortals who wanted to use the heads of those who had evil intentions against Chunyang Palace to please Chunyang Palace. They chose to take action at this time. Their luck was not ordinary. Elder Wu released the news of an auction. Yang Chun immediately made a decision and said to Elder Wu, "Say that there is a piece of top-grade Netherworld jade weighing more than half a kilogram. It will be auctioned in a month." Top-grade Netherworld jade? Elder Wu Xiong frowned when he heard this. Obviously, he was not knowledgeable enough. Until now, he had not realized what the top-grade Netherworld jade meant. However, Elder Wu Xiong had heard that something that even ordinary people in the mortal world did not want would be auctioned here. Was this a joke? However, Elder Wu Xiong also knew that Yang Chun was not a person who spoke without thinking. After being surprised for a moment, he immediately sent someone to make arrangements. After the arrangements were made, he began to ask about the mystery of this thing and the purpose of auctioning it at this time. Just wait and see. Soon, someone will bring the head of the guy who did it, and even the whole family to take credit. Yang Chun did not explain very clearly. He just said such a sentence that made Elder Wu confused for a long time. Was the top-grade Netherworld jade so magical? Next, people's reaction directly made Elder Wu Xiong's question even more puzzled. As soon as the news was released, at least 90% of the people in Sunset Rock were indifferent after hearing it. There are even a few human immortals who did not know the depth of the matter. Who would want this kind of smelly jade? Could it be that it was specially sold to those fiendish cultivators who refined corpses? The higher-ups of all the big shops were all shocked. Without saying a word, they immediately sent the news back to the sect for the sect to make a decision. As for themselves, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of strangeness. All their attention was focused on Wanbao Tower. Some people began to secretly ask about the origin of the Netherworld Jade. Elder Wu Xiong could naturally feel this strange atmosphere, but he still could not understand it. Fortunately, Elder Wu Xiong was not an ordinary person. While he was on patrol, he began to ask about the use of the top-grade Netherworld Jade from various channels. How could Yang Chun be so confident about this kind of smelly stone that even mortals would not care about? If the Myriad Treasure Tower wanted to inquire about something, that was really not something very difficult. Soon, Elder Wu Xiong received an explanation about the top-grade Netherworld Jade. After reading it, Elder Wu Xiong did not say a word for a long time. Reality was too crazy. Trash that mortals abandoned like a pair of worn-out shoes was actually a treasure that could not be snatched in the spiritual realm. If he had known this earlier, he would have found some Netherworld Jade before he ascended. He would not have regretted digging until the end of time. Chapter 1757. Those who didn't understand still couldn't understand. Was a small piece of Netherworld Jade worth being auctioned? It seemed that only the 4th Revolution Marrow Cleansing Pill and the 5th Revolution Appearance Pill were worth buying in the auction of the Sunset Rock Wanbao Tower. The other items were not worth buying at all. Those who understood were worried about how many spirit stones would be needed to buy this piece of Netherworld Jade that weighed a little more than half a kilogram. No one was a fool. How could such a good item, which was so rare in the entire spiritual realm, be bought with mere spirit stones? Using magic treasures to exchange for it? What grade of magic treasure? How many would be needed to buy it? Spirit pill? How many seventh revolution pills would be needed to get it? Those who were tempted were so worried that their hair had turned white. How many people would have to fight for it before they could win it? The key was that if they couldn't estimate its value, they wouldn't be able to get it. How much was your life worth? How many spirit stones? How many magic treasures? How many spirit medicines? It was the divine perching jade. A piece weighing more than half a kilogram was enough to store the natal divine sense of a heaven immortal expert. With this, they wouldn't be afraid to go through a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames. With just this backing, how many more things could he do, and how many more treasures could he snatch? Not being afraid of death was only one of the most basic functions of the divine perching jade. Another function that couldn't be ignored was the confidence brought by having a backup plan. Every cultivator knew the meaning of mental cultivation. With the divine perching jade, they wouldn't be afraid of any dangerous attempts. They wouldn't be afraid even if they failed to break through to a certain realm. In many things, the more afraid they were, the less confident they would be, and the lower the success rate would be. With enough confidence, the success rate of breaking through to a new realm will be much higher than others. The benefits were simply innumerable. As long as they remembered the most important point, it would be enough to give them another life. With a life, everything would be possible. While countless people were worrying about what price to pay to get this divine perching jade, a large group of people were pondering about the origin of this divine perching jade. If an ordinary cultivator had a piece of divine perching jade, would he take it out to exchange for some spirit stones or magic treasures? 9 out of 10 people would be unable to answer this question. No matter how tired he was right now, there was no need to exchange his life for these worldly possessions, right? Under what circumstances would he be willing to auction off a piece of dwelling divine jade? Putting themselves in their shoes, many people would naturally come to the conclusion that they would only take out one piece to exchange for other benefits when they had at least 2 or more pieces in their hands. When the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. Some people liked to take the righteous path, such as collecting their family's wealth to participate in auctions. Some people liked to take the unorthodox path, such as robbing others without spending their own money. Since they had guessed this possibility, everyone began to target the owner of the dwelling soul jade. Yang Chun was the first person suspected of being the owner of the dwelling soul jade. Many people could prove that shortly after Yang Chun arrived at the Sunset Rock that day, Wanbao Tower released the news that it was going to auction the dwelling soul jade. Whether it was the relationship between Yang Chun and Wanbao Tower or Yang Chun's previous habits of doing things, there was a 90% chance that Yang Chun was the owner of the dwelling soul jade. As soon as this conclusion came out, many people were dumbfounded. They might not be afraid to deal with an earth immortal or even a human immortal, but once the owner was Yang Chun, everyone was a little afraid. As the 5th grade alchemist with the highest level of alchemy and the owner of the prolonging life pill, what Yang Chun had done in just 200 years was enough for many people to look at him in a different light. No one would say anything if he secretly dealt with other people in Chunyang Palace, but if he dared to touch Yang Chun, it would be like eating arsenic. In fact, the first thing the 5 great sects did after receiving the news was to discuss it with the higher-ups. They didn't even have to doubt that this was the rumor released by Yang Chun, and the dwelling soul jade must be provided by Yang Chun. If they didn't believe it, they could just ask Yang Chun's disciples to come over and ask them, "Dwelling soul jade? What is that?" Sun Qingxue was confused and didn't know what the dwelling soul jade was. It's the best quality netherworld jade. Elder Hua Wanting knew a little earlier than Sun Qingxue and explained to Sun Qingxue in front of the higher-ups of the Blue Cloud sect. "Oh, it's those smelly jade stones." Sun Qingxue's face was suddenly enlightened, and then she replied without scheming, "My husband has it. That year, when we went to the Langia well to cultivate, we found a netherworld jade vein. We all thought it was smelly, so it took my husband a few months to dig out. It's all with him. It seemed that Sun Qingxue didn't hide anything from the elders, but in fact, everything was told by Yang Chun before. Once Yang Chun released the Netherworld Jade, the sect would definitely ask them about the Netherworld Jade. They just needed to tell them directly at this time. Sun Qingxue was not a fool. Since the higher-ups of the sect asked this, of course, she understood that her husband must have made some moves. How could she not speak for her husband? When they heard that Sun Qingxue didn't care about those stones because they smelled, and Yang Chun monopolized all the Netherworld Jade, the higher-ups of the Blue Cloud sect hated that they couldn't beat their heads to the ground. How could such a thing happen? It was just a little smell. Would they die if they endured it for a while? But on the other hand, when they were in the mortal world, it wasn't like they hadn't encountered Netherworld Jade. Didn't everyone ignore it because it didn't taste good and it was useless? Otherwise, how could there be so little Netherworld Jade in the spiritual realm? A whole load. Even a peak Yuaniing stage master like Yang Chun had to dig for a few months to finish it. How much dwelling divine jade did Yang Chun have? Those who heard the news were truly on the verge of going crazy. The only good news was that Yang Chen's other wives and concubines all didn't take action because of the smell of the Netherworld Jade. All the Netherworld Jade was in Yang Chen's hands. If their sect didn't have it, the other sect didn't have it either. This also meant that this large batch of Netherworld Jade was exclusively supplied by Chunyang Palace and Yang Chun. What should we do next? The higher-ups let Sun Qingxue leave, and then everyone began to discuss countermeasures. Let little Shui go to Chunyang Palace. With her, Yang Chun will be much easier to talk to. Sect Master Lu in the mortal world directly proposed to let Sun Qingxue come forward. This proposal was unanimously agreed by the other higher-ups. When the news spreads, I believe that many people will have bad intentions. The elder of Chuangong of the Blue Cloud sect then suggested, Yang Chun didn't release it earlier or later, but at this time. Check what happened recently. If anyone has offended the people of Chunyang Palace, bring their heads as a gift. Chapter 1758. The Blue Cloud sect was like this. The Green Jade Immortal Island was the same. The Five Elements sect and the Chinquin sect decision was exactly the same. Without saying anything, she immediately sent her female disciple to find her husband, and then sent another person to kill all the guys who were hostile to the Pure Yang Palace within 20,000 miles of the Sheeping Mountain outside the Sunset Rock, and kill them and bring their heads to the door. The senior officials of the Xintian sect were different from other sections. After knowing that it was Yang Chun who released the Underworld Jade, two elders were slightly dissatisfied. With such a good thing, why didn't he say it was filial piety at the beginning? Maybe he thought it was just the Underworld Jade at the beginning, but he didn't know it was the Dwelling God Jade. Not long ago, he learned the effect of the Dwelling God Jade. Elderly certainly had to speak for Yang Chun. Otherwise, it would not be a good thing if Yang Chun was misunderstood by other senior officials. Don't say that he is a Chunyang Palace that has no inheritance in the spiritual realm. Right now, 80% of the cultivators in the spiritual realm probably don't know about the Dwelling God Jade. This was the truth. Most cultivators really didn't know about the Dwelling God Jade until they ascended or died. Which cultivator who had the Dwelling God Jade didn't hide it tightly for fear that others would know? How could Yang Chun publicize it like this? I believe that it won't be long before our sect will have another batch of Dwelling God Jade. Elderly went on to say, Yang Chun now released this Dwelling God Jade. He must have a request, but he doesn't want to expose his relationship with the sect. Let's send someone over and listen to what he wants. Everyone thought it made sense. Yang Chun seemed to have never given them less filial piety, so he should have just learned about the effect of the Dwelling God Jade. They called Tao Junkie over and asked. Sure enough, Yang Chun had a lot of Dwelling God Jade in his hands, and Tao Junkie, a disciple who was close to the Earth Immortal stage, still didn't know that the best quality Underworld Jade was the Dwelling God Jade. Tao Junkie's performance also showed that Elder Li's explanation was correct. Even the official disciple of the Black Heaven sect, Tao Junkie, who was about to reach the Earth Immortal stage, didn't know about the Perching Soul Jade. It was understandable that Yang Chun had only just found out about it. Let's find out all the troubles of Chunyang Palace recently. It is estimated that other sect will also take action. Our sect should be more ruthless and completely sweep away some troubles for Chunyang Palace. After accepting Elder Li's explanation, Yangchun was once again a disciple that needed strong support. Since he was going to make a move, why not clean it up a little? The cultivators in the sect within a radius of tens of thousands of miles around the Sunset Rock were alarmed to find that the 5 great sects of the Dao sects had become much more overbearing in recent days. If they were not careful, they would attract the attention of experts. Some unscrupulous fellows were directly killed without even a chance to explain. When Yang Chun saw the injured disciple of Chunyang Palace who was attacked, the heads of the 2 cultivators who attacked him were immediately sent to the Wanbao Tower. On the 3rd day, the small sect that the 2 cultivators belonged to was completely uprooted. There were more than 100 people in the sect, and no one was left alive. It was the people of the 5 Elements sect who had saved the disciple. The 5 Elements sect directly spread the word that this was what their elder had promised to Chunyang Palace. If anyone dared to have any evil intentions towards Chunyang Palace in the territory of Chunyang Palace and within the scope of Sheeping Mountain, they would be killed without hesitation. The sect that was killed was an example. Not only the 5 Elements sect, but the Qinquan sect also sent a large number of heads over. All of them were people who wanted to have bad ideas after hearing about the appearance of the perching soul jade. A row of bloody 6 Sun's chief heads and a cold and merciless warning caused all those who had ill intentions to shudder in fear. The Green Jade, Immortal Island, and the Blue Cloud sect also did not fall behind. There were a lot of heads, plus these people's original magic treasures and wealth. In addition, they jointly declared that if they wanted the perching soul jade, they should honestly compete in the auction house. If they dared to have any bad ideas, they would be exterminated. The Shantian sect did not say these words. Everyone knew that some of the fairy immortal masters of the Shantian sect were actually forced to accept Yang Chen's condition of protecting Chunyang Palace for 1,000 years. With the fact that Yang Chun had killed the disciples of the Shantian sect, the Shantian sect had kept its promise by not exterminating Chunyang Palace on the spot. In this matter, it might be a bit difficult to count on the Shantian sect to make a statement. However, it was the Shantian sect that surprised everyone the most. It was also the Shantian sect that made the most ruthless move. The other 4 major sects only killed those who had made a move on the disciples of Chunyang Palace or those who had plans to do so in the near future. The Shantian sect plowed through all the sects within tens of thousands of miles around Sheeping Mountain, which were rumored to have disagreements with Chunyang Palace. It was so that no one would have the idea of robbing the perching soul jade from Chunyang Palace. The 5 major sects acted together, which scared countless people, but it also gave everyone a piece of news. That was, the perching soul jade belonged to Chunyang Palace and Yangchun. If they wanted the perching soul jade, they should honestly go to the auction house to bid. Don't play some private tricks. As for robbing the perching soul jade, don't even think about it. Didn't you see that there were only a few people left in the sect who didn't want to live and wanted to fight against the 5 major sects at the same time? The Shantian sect was destroyed in the mortal world, but the spiritual realm was still the biggest Taoist sect. Didn't you see how ruthless they were when they acted? He was venting his resentment for the extermination of the mortal world on these unlucky fellows. Whoever didn't open his eyes at this time was courting death, and no one would sympathize with him. Elder Wu Xiong had a thorough understanding of Yang Chen's power. When he was in the mortal world, he ascended early and only saw Yang Chen's alchemy skills. Only now did he realize how terrifying Yang Chen's influence was. The disciples of Chunyang Palace had just been seriously injured, but Yang Chun didn't even do anything. He just released the news. Only a few days later, someone brought the heads of the people who did it to him. This kind of comfortable feeling could only be described with the word cool. Even when Elder Wu Xiong was in the mortal world and faced the 5 major sects, he had never had such a tough moment. Now that he followed Yang Chun, he finally enjoyed it. It was simply refreshing from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. It was so cool. Yang Chun himself had rushed back to Chunyang Palace leisurely and reported to the elders what he had done over the years. After letting them be mentally prepared, several core elders each presented a piece of perching soul jade the same size as the netherworld jade that was auctioned, and also gave them the refining method. It wasn't that Yang Chan was lazy and didn't refine it for the elders. It was best to refine the perching soul jade himself. On the one hand, it was to avoid others suspecting that the refiner had tampered with it. On the other hand, the one refined by himself was the most compatible with his own primordial spirit. Thirdly, it was Yang Chen's consideration. He couldn't let the elders feel that they couldn't do anything without him, right? Chapter 1759. After returning to the sect, Yang Chen was waiting for the people from the 5 sects to come to him. In fact, not only the 5 sects, but also those sects that the Devil Gate, Monster Race, and Individual Cultivators Alliance had cooperated with in the mortal world would definitely come to him. Yang Chen would release a batch of inhabiting God Jade, but not a lot. As long as he could ensure that each senior member of the sect could have one, and a small group of outstanding or important disciples could have one, it would be enough. If he released too many, he believed that even if the sect wanted it, it would not be able to pay the price. However, Wanbao Tower would supply it intermittently in the future, maintaining a long-term opportunity for cultivators to get inhabiting God Jade. In this way, whether it was the business of Chunyang Palace or the development of the sect, it could have a long-term stable development period. Treasures like the perching divine jade would definitely attract the covetous eyes of certain people. However, as long as the Devil Gate, Monster Race, and Individual Cultivators Alliance did not take action, the small sect would not dare to take action easily. This time, the Taoist sect's sweep was a lesson for many people with bad intentions. Before taking action, they always had to think about whether it was worth it to offend so many big sects. As for the sect itself, it knew that this kind of thing could not be monopolized, and Yang Chen's attitude was very clear that as long as they paid the right price, they could get it. So, why would they do such a treacherous thing and become the target of public criticism? The Taishaman in the mortal world had done too much. The end of the sect was still in front of them, and no one would make a wrong choice. As Yang Chen expected, the people from the 5 sects came quickly. The day before the Wanbao Tower auctioned the inhabiting God Jade, Yang Chen's wives and concubines arrived together. Naturally, the representatives of their respective sects also accompanied them. However, at first, no one talked about the inhabiting God Jade. They just settled down under the guise of visiting each other in the sect. The people in Chunyang Palace also knew very well that they had to see the auction price of the inhabiting God Jade in Wanbao Tower. With that price as a reference, they could discuss the next cooperation. When the husband and wife met, it was naturally another round of intimacy. Yang Chen had already prepared the spirit pills for everyone. During the waiting time, everyone left their own life source primordial spirit and let Xiao Tian put it in the Dragon Tower. At this point, except for Gao Yugong Sunling and Lady Fanghua, Yang Chen's wives and concubines had left their natal primordial spirits behind, so their lives were protected. Yang Chen had also given Shi Shanshan the location and the method of unsealing the masters recorded on the 7th zither given by Elderly. After the first experience in the sect, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue could set off separately to unseal the masters. The girls already knew that Yang Chen would definitely give his family something better, so they were not surprised at the appearance of the spiritual energy pill. After happily leaving their natal primordial spirits, the girls began to enjoy the joy of getting together with their husbands and sisters. As for the matter of the sect, they didn't mention a word. Their presence here had already explained the attitude of the major sect. They didn't need to say much about the specific matters. Naturally, there were people in charge. Moreover, to put it bluntly, their current status in their respective sect had not yet reached the point where they could make decisions for the sect. The auction was held as scheduled. To the surprise of the participating cultivators, the 5 major sect didn't make a move this time. It was entirely the small sect and the rogue cultivators who competed for it. In front of the inhabiting God Jade that could give them one more life and one more chance, even the rational cultivators would put down their perseverance and become crazy. The auctioneer didn't even do much to stir up the emotions. He simply announced the start of the auction, and the atmosphere of the scene rushed to a climax. Although the auction didn't have a low price, the bid started with 5 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones. Then, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, it rushed to 50 kilograms, and it was still rising. It should be known that 1 kilogram of top-grade spirit stones in the spiritual realm was equivalent to 50 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones in the mortal world. In this way, this piece of inhabiting God jade, which was slightly more than half a kilogram, had already been sold for the price of at least a second-rate sect in the mortal world. Many people couldn't take out so many spirit stones directly. Before the auction, they would use some of their property, magic treasures, or elixirs to make an estimate and then call out the price after converting it into spirit stones. At the price of 50 kilograms, it had basically caused many wealthy rogue cultivators to go bankrupt. However, the crazy bidding continued, and the price of 50 kilograms only stopped for a moment before it was surpassed. When the final result was out, it had already reached the price of 50 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones. The owner of a big business bought this piece of inhabiting God jade at this price. After the transaction, he couldn't wait to leave the sunset rock and finished refining it first. Then he left his original spirit behind and left. With this price as a reference, the major sect also knew what to do and began to contact Yangchen. In this regard, Chunyang Palace didn't obstruct them. This was Yangchen's thing, so naturally it was up to Yangchen to deal with. However, they believed that Yangchen would definitely fight for enough benefits for the sect. The people of the 5 sects were all present, and Yangchen also wanted to negotiate at once. Since everyone had the same conditions, they would probably feel more balanced. Each family will pay 50 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones for each kilogram, and we will use magic treasures, elixirs, and cultivation methods to offset the price. What do you think? Yangchen didn't say much nonsense and went straight to the point. He believed that the representatives of the major sect were not in the mood for small talk. This price should be said to be slightly lower than the price at the auction, but wholesale was always cheaper than retail. However, Yangchen didn't want spirit stones, but other things, which made the representatives feel a little relieved. In this way, some of their own things might be able to offset the spirit stones at a slightly higher price, and there would be no trouble after exchanging for spirit stones. Okay, a representative nodded. The other representatives didn't have any objections, so the price was set. Can it be a little more? The elder of the Blue Cloud sect asked. 100 kilograms of inhabiting God jade could at most be distributed to 100 people. Which of the 5 sects sect didn't have more than 100,000 disciples? 100 kilograms was really not enough. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a drop in the bucket. This sentence was actually the voice of all the representatives present. An additional 100 kilograms for each family in exchange for 3,000 years of peace in Chunyang Palace. Of course, Yangchen wouldn't refuse, so he directly put forward his own conditions. 100 kilograms could basically increase the safety of another 300 disciples. Everyone present was mentally prepared for the condition that Yangchen would definitely put forward to take care of Chunyang Palace. Everyone looked at each other, and it seemed that no one had any objections. Finally, they nodded one after another. The 5 sect would take care of Chunyang Palace, a small sect that had just gotten a foothold for only 4,000 years. It was not a problem. Chapter 1760. It's not that I'm arrogant, but it's related to the safety of the sect. This junior would like to ask the sect master and the 5 elders to make a great hard oath. This kind of condition was not easy to deal with. If one day these guys suddenly wanted to break the contract, they could casually find a reason to destroy Chunyang Palace. Yangchen had to use some extreme means. The current Chunyang Palace could not withstand a few tosses. The 5 representatives suddenly had some anger on their faces. A small sect with only 100 or so people. Is it worthy for our sect master and elders to make a great hard oath? However, although they were angry, they couldn't turn hostile now. Everyone who could come to negotiate on behalf of the sect were all masters. It was just a verbal offense, but it was not enough to immediately make the representatives of the 5 major sect overturn the table. The purpose of this trip was the dwelling spirit jade, not to destroy Chunyang Palace and let a sect take advantage of it. In the hearts of the representatives, to be exact, in the hearts of the representatives of the Green Jade Immortal Island, Blue Cloud Sect, and the Five Elements Sect, Yang Chun was actually mainly targeting the Xintian sect. After all, Yang Chun had just ascended and killed several disciples of the Xintian sect. If they didn't guard against him, it would be strange. Although the Xintian sect could tolerate Chunyang Palace for 1,000 years, they might not be able to tolerate it for 4,000 years. The four representatives all looked at the Xintian sect. If the Xintian sect didn't do it, then there was nothing to say. The villain was the Xintian sect. If Yang Chun was not satisfied, he couldn't blame them. Everyone could also cooperate in private, as long as the Xintian sect was not involved. In secretly attacking the Xintian sect, the four sects could be said to have the same interests. To the surprise of the representatives of the four sects, the representative of the Xintian sect did not look angry at all. As early as before he went out, the senior members of the sect had specially told him that no matter what conditions Yang Chun asked for, as long as he could get enough dwelling spirit jade, it didn't matter even if the sect master made a great heart oath not to deal with Chunyang Palace. Now it seemed that the senior members of the sect were really far-sighted. They even expected this. The Black Heaven sect has no objections. The representative of the Xintian sect said calmly, "Sect master and a few elders will personally come to Chunyang Palace to get the inhabiting soul jade. At that time, you can directly make the great vow of the heart demon. Okay?" How could Yang Chun have any objection? This was obviously the decision of Sect Master Wang and Elderly. They firmly believed that Yang Chun was their disciple. How could they deal with Chunyang Palace? On the contrary, if they took the lead to agree, even if the four sect knew the secret of Chunyang Palace in the future, they had to brace themselves to protect Chunyang Palace. When sect leader Wang, Elderly, and several core high-level members were discussing, the scene they were most looking forward to was the joy of the major sect members discovering that Chunyang Palace was actually the Taishaman after they made the great oath of the heart demon. If it weren't for the fact that Chunyang Palace, standing in the dark, was more beneficial to Xintian sect, they would have wanted to see those guys' faces directly on the spot. Since even the Xintian sect had agreed, the other four sect members had no reason to object. As long as the high-level members made the great oath of the heart demon, they would be able to get hundreds of kilograms of inhabiting soul jade to benefit the sect. Anyway, it was only 4,000 years in total. For cultivators, it was not an unbearable time. This condition was agreed upon. Everyone's opinion was unanimous. That was, the high-level members of the sect would come to Chunyang Palace to take away the inhabiting soul jade and make the great oath of the heart demon. With so many inhabiting soul jade, the high-level members would inevitably be worried if they simply gave it to a few disciples. If they didn't go in person and make the great oath of the heart demon, they wouldn't be able to show off their achievements. From this point of view, the conditions put forward by Yang Chun were not completely unacceptable. The other 100 kilograms in exchange for the experience qualification of Chunyang Palace's disciples. Yang Chun immediately put forward another condition. Compared with the previous 400 kilograms, this 100 kilograms was simply a free gift for the five sect members. They didn't need to pay anything, nor did they need the protection of experts. They just wanted the experience qualification, which could be settled with just a few words. Everyone knew what the experience qualification Yang Chun was talking about was. Previously, Shi Shanshan, Sun Qingxue, and the others had also mentioned it. Even Elderly of the Xintian sect had mentioned it. They were talking about this experience qualification. At the border of the Taoist, demon, and demon territories, there was a vast area. This area was sealed by a huge array, and the array was controlled by the Taoist, demon, and demon sect. Within the array, there was a place similar to the demon continent in the mortal world, which provided the disciples of the sect with experience. Or, to be precise, this training ground should be similar to the immortal fallen abyss in the mortal world. The target of the disciples was a very ferocious, demonic spiritual beast. This kind of demonic spiritual beast always appeared, and its strength was between the human immortal realm and the peak of the earth immortal realm. It was the first choice for the disciples of the spiritual realm's big sect to train. The reason why the disciples of the big sect always had an advantage in the later stages of cultivation was inseparable from this kind of experience. The large number of enemies and the ferocious battles allowed the participating disciples to always obtain the most abundant combat experience, which had extraordinary benefits for their future cultivation. The battles inside were very cruel, many times crueler than outside the spiritual realm. In his previous life, Shan had never been to the demon continent in the mortal world. When she first came here to train, she was accidentally seriously injured, which delayed hundreds of years of healing. But later, Shan learned her lesson, and her cultivation soared to the sky, which may have had nothing to do with this experience. However, this training ground could only be entered by the disciples of the Taoist, demon, and demon sect. The disciples of the other sect could not participate at all. What Yangshan requested was that the disciples of the Chunyang Palace also have such an opportunity to train. It was just a request for the opportunity to train, and it was proposed to the five great sect at the same time. It seemed that Yangshan was determined to get it. Even the representatives of the five great sect didn't have to think about it to know that Yangshan would definitely put forward this condition to the sect that the demon sect and the demon clan came to by the dwelling god Jade. In fact, as long as there was a big sect that opened its mouth, Chunyang Palace could participate in the training justifiably. Instead of letting a sect take advantage of it in the end, it was better for everyone to share the benefits, so that they wouldn't complain about Chunyang Palace's unfair distribution of the spoils in the future. The five representatives nodded and accepted this condition. At this point, Yangchen's requirements were all met. On the one hand, it exchanged for a large number of magic treasures, elixirs, and cultivation methods for the sect. On the other hand, it also won 4,000 years of development time and safety endorsement for the sect. In addition, it was to find a suitable place for the disciples of the sect to train. At this point, Yangshan could finally be a little relieved, and he didn't have to worry about the affairs of the sect anymore. As long as he negotiated the conditions with the representatives of the demon sect and the demon clan who came after hearing the news, Yangshan could also join the training himself. With everything arranged now, when the devil tribulation came in the future, Chunyang Palace could also rest easy. Chapter 1761. It seemed that the conditions put forward by Yangshan were very disadvantageous, but only Yangshan knew in his heart what kind of advantage he had. To put it bluntly, the resting god jade was a netherworld jade vein that he had dug out in the mortal world for a few days and then occupied some space in the Chinquan bag to bring it up to the spiritual realm. Compared with his own efforts, Chunyang Palace had been firmly guarded for 4,000 years. It had an additional place to practice, and at the same time, it could get the favor of countless masters. This was simply free. If he really wanted to hype up the value of these things, Yangshan would not have released the resting god jade at all. There was another advantage to this move. During the Millennium Devil Tribulation, at least the cultivators would have more effective forces, and their chances of winning would increase a lot. Another point was that the mysterious Zhao family might not care about anything else, but it was estimated that they would want to get something like the resting god jade at all costs. As long as they were tempted to take action, there would be traces to follow, and following this line, they could dig out the Zhao family. According to Zhao Qing, the master of the Zhao family on the other side of the Earth Dragon Ceiling Formation, Yangshan of the Rogue Cultivators Alliance had not made a move yet. That organization wanted to find the right time to push it to the Xintian sect. Only when many people died would the two sides fight to the death. The representatives of the five sects temporarily left. They had to rush back to the sect to report to the sect master immediately, while Yangshan's wives and concubines stayed to accompany Yangshan for a period of time. After the warning of the five sects, there were basically no cultivators or organizations that dared to attack Chunyang Palace in the Sunset Rock, Linyang River, Lihan Sea, and Sheeping Mountain. Within the territory of the Pure Yang Palace, it was calm and tranquil. No one would believe that someone would attack Chunyang Palace at this time. The people of the five sects didn't believe it, nor did the people of Chunyang Palace. Even the practitioners who stayed at the Sunset Rock didn't believe it. However, at this time, the attack was suddenly launched without warning. This was the time when everyone's vigilance was at its lowest. The representatives of the Five Sect had just left with the promise to protect Chunyang Palace for 3,000 years. If anyone dared to make a move at this time, it would definitely be like taking a dump on the heads of the Five Sect. There were not many cultivators involved in the attack, not more than 10 in total. They looked weak, but the problem was that there were 3 supreme mystic immortals among the 10 attackers. As for the remaining 7, there were 2 heaven immortals and 5 earth immortals. The other party might have thoroughly investigated the strength of Chunyang Palace. Among the people who ascended from Chunyang Palace, only Long Xian was above the level of an earth immortal. Among the earth immortals who joined the Chunyang Palace, there was also a Lan Ning. However, whether it was Long Xian or Lan Ning, they were not in the gate of Chunyang Palace at the moment. There were a lot of masters in Wanbao Tower, but because of the management reasons, the masters were distributed to various places. The closest one was also at the Sunset Rock. It would take at least 3 days to get to the gate of Chunyang Palace from the Sunset Rock. Fatty Jing and Zhou Xianying were heaven immortals, but they were all in the sea of hatred. No one would have thought that someone would attack the gate of Chunyang Palace, which seemed to be the safest. Therefore, there were only some newly ascended human immortal disciples and some rogue cultivators who joined later. Their average cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the human immortal. The attacker was too shrewd. He just happened to seize the weakest link of Chunyang Palace and calculated the time when no one expected to make a move. It was impossible to guard against. The other party had no intention of hiding at all, nor did he mean to sneak in. He directly attacked with the momentum of Mount Tai, showing no mercy. When Yang Chun noticed the incoming killing intent, the attack had already arrived. The attack of a supreme mystic immortal master came without warning. Even if Yang Chun was the most sensitive to killing intent, he only felt it after the other party launched an attack. In an instant, the mountain guarding formation shone, and the earthly immortal spiritual vein underground was directly activated to the maximum. Boom! The light flickered, and the mountain guarding formation took the blow. With just one blow, the light of the mountain guarding formation dimmed by 80% in an instant, and it was on the verge of collapse. Although it barely took the attack, the elders and more than a dozen disciples who were responsible for maintaining the formation were injured at the same time. Before the people of Chunyang Palace could react, the second blow had already followed. Boom! A huge palm of spiritual power in the sky slammed heavily on the mountain guarding formation, which was already barely maintained. This time, there was no fluke. With a flash of light, the entire mountain guarding formation was shattered. The huge palm in the sky was still flashing, and it slammed down mercilessly. From the looks of it, it was obvious that it did not leave any way for the people in the mountain gate to survive. To everyone's surprise, this huge palm didn't hit the ground. As soon as the mountain guarding formation was broken, countless black and red celestial devouring bugs suddenly appeared under the formation. The celestial devouring bugs formed a large net that was big enough to cover the entire mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. The huge palm in the sky slammed directly on the celestial devouring bugs net. Elderbug had made his move. After Yang Chun unlocked the seal, Elderbug had been staying in Chunyang Palace, responsible for the safety of the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. Under normal circumstances, Elderbug would not make a move. He would only appear when he felt strong hostility. The attacker's attack was so sudden that even Yang Chun did not notice it in time, let alone Elderbug, who was still a little brainless. Fortunately, the mountain guarding formation had blocked the attack, giving Elderbug a chance to react. Although the opponent's second attack broke the mountain guarding formation, it failed to break Elderbug's celestial devouring bug net. These attackers originally thought that there was just a group of human immortals here. 3 supreme Xian immortals, 2 celestial immortals, and 5 earth immortals would definitely be able to sweep them away. Suddenly, they found that there was a supreme Xian immortal master in the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. How could they not be surprised? However, so what if there was a supreme Xian immortal master? There were 3 supreme Immortals in this attack. Even if the celestial devouring bug queen could entangle one, there were still 2 supreme Immortals. It would be easy to destroy the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace and capture Yangchun. The celestial devouring bug net was also smashed by the palm, but the huge palm in the air also disintegrated at the same time and could no longer cause any damage. Strong enemy, avoid. The voice of the palace master had reached the ears of all the disciples of Chunyang Palace. Just these 2 moves had already made the head of the palace clearly judge the strength of the enemy and immediately made the most correct arrangement. It was not a responsible leader to let a group of human immortal disciples fight with a master who smashed the mountain protection array. It was not something that a responsible leader should do. The palace master did not care about his reputation and directly let the disciples retreat. All the disciples in Chunyang Palace immediately fled. No matter what, whether it was revenge or investigation, escaping and surviving was the hard truth. Chapter 1762. Countless celestial devouring bugs gathered and turned into a huge celestial devouring bug. Elder Bug had already determined that the opponent's cultivation was slightly weaker than his, but it was still limited. He could only rely on his doppelganger to fight against the opponent, so he could only reveal his true body. However, before Elder Bug could completely reveal himself, another powerful aura directly covered the entire Chunyang Palace. Under the pressure of the powerful divine sense, a huge bomb seemed to explode in everyone's mind. The disciples whose divine sense was not at the earthly immortal level instantly fainted, unable to escape even if they wanted to. Yangchun and his wife's divine sense was strong enough to reach the celestial immortal level, so they did not faint under the pressure of the divine sense. However, Yangchun had instantly determined that this was a second supreme mystic immortal expert. Their divine sense was too weak to fight against the opponent. Blessings never come in pairs, but misfortunes never come alone. Just when Yangchun thought that the opponent only had 2 supreme mystic immortal experts, and that Elder Bug and the Earth Dragon could still fight, a third aura appeared and instantly drowned Yangchun and his wives. In addition, the aura of 2 celestial immortals was also released without any concealment, plowing back and forth several times in the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. Everything happened too quickly. With such a lineup, Yangchun did not even have a chance to resist. The only fortunate thing was that his wives and concubines were by his side. Without saying a word, Yangchun waved his hand and took his wives into the Dragon Palace. No matter how they resisted, Yangchun had no intention of letting them out. It was better for Yangchun to face such a strong enemy alone. He summoned the flying shuttle and drilled into the ground with Yangchun. At this time, it was best to escape as far as possible. As long as his people were still alive, everything was possible. Want to run? In your dreams. A voice rang in Yangchun's ear, as if the person was right next to Yangchun's ear. The strong pressure almost made Yangchun lose control of the flying shuttle. However, he still underestimated Yangchun. He thought that Yangchun's consciousness would at most be at the level of an Earth Immortal if he didn't faint under the powerful consciousness attack of a Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal. He didn't expect that Yangchun had broken through repeatedly recently and had even rushed to the 3rd stage of Heaven Immortal, which was 2 whole stages higher than his spiritual power cultivation. Even in such a critical situation, Yangchun was still able to forcibly control the shuttle and escape to the periphery. This was the first time Yangchun had thought about running away since coming to the spirit plane. Back then, when he was unsealing the Earth Dragons, he had not thought about running away. Back then, when he was facing thousands of desert ogres at the Earthen Immortal stage, he did not even think about it. However, in the face of 3 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortals, even if Elder Bug and Earth Dragon were present in Chunyang Palace, Yangchun knew that he could not compete with the remaining Grand Supreme. At this time, speed was the key to survival. Under the siege of 2 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortals at the same time, the shuttle actually found a small loophole and rushed out. Then it used its maximum speed to cut through the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it was hundreds of miles away. A voice was surprised, but it didn't say anything more and directly caught up. In the shuttle, Yang Chun could clearly feel that two powerful consciousnesses had been staring at him. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get rid of them. There was no other way. Even if Yang Chen's consciousness had reached the fairy immortal stage, there was still a big gap between him and the other party, and he couldn't compete at all. If the sea-pouring jasper cup was still in his hand, maybe Yang Chun could still cover his consciousness and wait for an opportunity to escape. However, now that he was firmly stared at by two Grand Supreme Mystic Immortals, he could only have a slight advantage in speed, which could barely keep the distance between the two sides from being narrowed. There was no other way. For the first time, Yang Chun found that his strength was so weak that he had no resistance in front of a powerful enemy. Even if he had the memory of being reborn for 10,000 years, he was still helpless in the face of this kind of strength crushing without any tricks. The other party still had a Grand Supreme Master, two Fairy Immortals, and an unknown number of Earth Immortals. The Palace Master and the others could never escape. Even if Old Bug could resist one, it was estimated that it would take a while to defeat them. Chunyang Palace was in danger. At this time, Yang Chun had no time to pay attention to the result of Chunyang Palace. If he escaped, he would have a chance to save them or avenge them. The enemy's posture, they didn't kill Yang Chun as soon as they came up. Obviously, they had other intentions. The first thought that flashed through Yang Chun's mind was the Dwelling God Jade. He still underestimated the attraction of the Dwelling God Jade to the cultivators. Even the Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal Masters came out and chose such a time. There was no chance to resist. Taking out the Dwelling God Jade when Chunyang Palace was so weak was the only mistake Yang Chun made. He thought that as long as there was the care of the 5 major sects, coupled with the promise of the demon sects and monster race, the Pure Yang Palace would be safe and sound, but he did not expect that there was such a group of masters who did not care about these big sects. Regardless of the door, they did not care about anything else. However, at this moment, it was not up to Yang Chun to regret and be depressed. The pursuers were behind him. He could only run forward, and he did not even dare to change his direction. Because as long as he changed his direction slightly, the other party might catch up. The women in the Dragon Palace were already very anxious at this time. They did not know how to help their husband. The strength of the enemy was unexpectedly strong. In this case, how could their husband survive? Yang Chen's only chance now was the Earth Dragon on his wrist. After all, the cultivation of Elder Bug might be stronger than that of the guy left behind. Once one of them turned back to help, the remaining one might be able to kill the Earth Dragon by surprise. There was still a chance for everything. However, the 2 Grand Supreme Masters behind him seemed to be staring at him. They did not care what happened at the gate of Chunyang Palace. They just stared at Yang Chun, as if they knew that all the Dwelling God Jade was with Yang Chun. In fact, this was not difficult to guess. Anyone would have such doubts. Just when Yang Chun was almost at his wit's end, he suddenly heard a familiar voice in his ear. "Stop ahead." Hearing this voice, Yang Chun was overjoyed, and his whole body was immediately full of strength. Without thinking about it, the shuttle driven by Yang Chun stopped not far ahead. Then Yang Chun also appeared, put away the shuttle, and turned to look at the 2 figures chasing him. They did not expect that Yang Chun would have this trick. The 2 Xian Immortal Masters who were chasing him were very surprised, but they did not hesitate. The 2 figures landed on both sides of Yang Chun. One of them waved his hand, and dozens of formation flags enveloped Yang Chun in them. Then the 2 began to check if there were any other cultivators around. Chapter 1763. They were thousands of miles away from the gate of Chunyang Palace. If Yang Chun hadn't stopped, they would have had to spend a lot of effort to catch up. In this way, the 2 of them had to be more careful. A puny human immortal junior dared to face the 2 of them like this. Could there be an ambush here? Under Yang Chen's overly calm face, the 2 supreme mystic immortal experts carefully explored the surrounding 100 miles, but they didn't find anything that could threaten them. There wasn't even a demonic beast that surpassed human immortal, let alone an earth immortal cultivator. It was impossible for there to be a formation. Even if there was, it would be outside of the formation flags that the expert had just thrown. The formation flags were refined by a supreme mystic immortal expert, should be able to resist even the strongest formation in the spiritual realm, right? If there was any change, the formation flags would be enough to buy them a little time to react. The expression on Yang Chen's face was too calm, without the slightest panic of being chased, so the two of them were a little suspicious. After checking again and finding nothing, the two of them looked at each other. They were both supreme mystic immortal experts, but they were actually fooled by a human immortal junior like Yang Chen. However, this little trick was meaningless to the two grand supreme experts who had hearts of stone. So what if they were tricked? What would they do? Would it be a small piece of meat on his body, or would he be able to escape? Since it was of no use, they could completely ignore this little trick that couldn't even shake their state of mind. You want the perching divine jade? Yang Chen was the first to speak, and he immediately asked them for the reason. If the two supreme mystic immortal experts were to make a move without enough benefits, no one would believe it. You're not stupid. The supreme in front sneered and said, since you know what we want, why don't you take it out obediently? Do you want us to take it from your dead body? Not stupid. Stupid to the max. The voice of the supreme, who had just scattered the formation flags, came from behind. If you're not stupid, why would you take out the perching divine jade at this time? You are just a little human immortal junior. Together with your Chunyang palace, you are just a few non-entities. You dare to have such a treasure and publicize it? You are simply courting death. Seniors, do you dare to tell me your names? Yang Chen didn't care about the two sarcastic words and directly asked for their names. Oh, do you want to know our identities? Perhaps because they were both within the range of the array flags, the two masters were very relaxed. Hearing Yang Chen's question, they were not in a hurry to act. Instead, the master in front began to talk with Yang Chen. You are now a fish on the chopping block, and your death is imminent. Even if you know our identities, what can you do? Could it be that he still wanted to send a message? Don't even dream about it. Boy, in this array formation, don't even talk about sending a letter out. If your spiritual consciousness can pass through even a trace of it, then you'd already be amazing. Since that's the case, why don't the two of you state your identities? Yang Chen ignored their attitudes and directly provoked them. You are still so stubborn when you are about to die. I have never seen anyone like you. The old man behind him laughed, and it seemed that he didn't mean to kill Yang Chen immediately. Instead, he talked to Yang Chen. Let this old man guess, what kind of confidence do you have to make you dare to talk so confidently in front of the two of us? It seems that you know that you're going to die, and you know that there is no chance of survival, so you let go of everything. The great elder behind him said slowly, but his body did not move. He still clamped Yang Chen in the middle with the great elder in front of him. I have seen many people who are not afraid of death, but you are the first one like this. It was still the great elder behind him who spoke, and there was even a smile in his words. It is rare for you to be so open-minded at such a young age. However, I guess it is still because of the divine jade. Since you can release the divine jade, it means that you already know the use of the divine jade. You also have a large amount of divine jade in your hands. In that case, you have already left your primordial spirit in the divine jade. Even if you die now, you can still revive over there. The great elder behind him was smiling more and more, as if he was happy that he had guessed the answer to Yang Chen's riddle. You insist on knowing our identities because you want to wait for the 5 major sects to help you after you revive. Is that so? The great elder in front of him also continued to speak. The two of them had smiles on their faces as they chatted with Yang Chen like this. They seemed to be very happy. Yang Chen didn't say anything, but his expression was no longer as calm as before. It was as if his plan had been exposed. However, young man, you might have guessed something wrong. The great elder facing Yang Chen smiled and said, it's just the divine jade. It can't let you bring your memories over any time and anywhere. When you send your primordial spirit in, your memories will stop at that time after you revive. Even if I tell you who I am, you won't know. Seeing the obvious shock on Yang Chen's face, the two great elders were simply too happy. A human celestial junior was able to make the two of them almost unable to catch up to him. He did have some ability. They had heard a lot about Yang Chen. He was able to do so many things at such a young age and cultivation level. If he was their junior, he would definitely be a genius that they would support. Unfortunately, Yang Chun was an enemy now. Yang Chun was clearly a plaything that they were playing with, like a cat playing with a mouse. The psychological blow to Yang Chun made them happier than if they killed Yang Chun. Now, do you still want to know our identities? The Grand Elder at the back asked with a smile, very cooperatively. After asking, there was a burst of unsuppressed laughter. Yang Chen's face seemed to become uglier and uglier as he laughed. However, even if you didn't ask, we would still tell you. After laughing out loud, the Great Elder at the front suddenly said something that surprised Yang Chun. I heard that you have a few zither like this. I think you know the secret of this zither. Under Yang Chen's surprised expression, a zither that was exactly the same as the 7 zither that Yang Chun had appeared in the hands of the Great Elder at the front. The Great Elder at the back also took out the same zither. What secret is in this zither? The two of them each held a zither and played it. Only then did the Grand Supreme Expert in front of them ask, Zhao family zither? You're from the Zhao family? The moment he saw the zither, Yang Chen's eyes lit up. He immediately understood the identity of these two experts. Chapter 1764. Who dared to directly deal with the pure Yang Palace in such a blatant manner after the 5 major sects had collectively spoken? Who could take out the 2 remaining ancient zither that Yang Chun had not found? Who would be so unhesitant to attack the pure Yang Palace? The Zhao family, only the Zhao family. Yang Chun told the 5 major sect that the ancient zither might be a mark to identify the Zhao family, and the 5 major sect must have secretly tracked it down. Among the disciples who tracked it down, there might be some arranged by the Zhao family, so it was not surprising that the Zhao family knew this news. However, they found Yang Chun so quickly, even brought the 2 remaining ancient zither, and were sure that Yang Chun knew the secret, which was beyond Yang Chen's expectation. It could even be said that this was a surprise. At this time, Yang Chun really wanted to laugh a few times and then very arrogantly say, I have worn out iron shoes to look for it, but it doesn't take any effort to get it. Unfortunately, the situation in front of him was not good for him to do so. If you want to know the secret of the ancient zither, exchange it with your secret. Yang Chun finally had a smile on his face. This was simply too surprising. Okay, I'll let you know before you die. For this request of Yang Chun, the Supreme Master on the opposite side agreed without hesitation, which made Yang Chun a little doubt whether he said it casually. But thinking about it, it was normal. Since Yang Chun had been trapped, 2 Supreme Mystic Immortal Masters against a human Immortal Junior like Yang Chun had no way to turn the situation around. What were the 2 Masters worried about? Even if Yang Chun had the Divine Jade, it was impossible for him to know more after his resurrection. So what if they told him? Besides, if they used other means, they might not be able to get the information from Yang Chun and Yang Chen's mouth. Yang Chun had the Divine Jade, so he was not afraid of death. Once they pressed too hard, Yang Chun would immediately commit suicide. Wouldn't the 2 be in vain? Wouldn't it be imperfect if he only got some dwelling Divine Jade and didn't figure out the secret of the zither? They could only blame their ancestors for not passing down any records. Otherwise, the disciples of the Zhao clan wouldn't have to spend so much effort to find the secret of the zither. In fact, the Zhao family didn't pay much attention to the zither in the past. It was usually given to the younger generation to practice music. It was only in the past few decades that the disciples who possessed the zither had met with a series of mishaps. Only then did the seniors of the Zhao clan want to investigate the secret of a zither. There are a few parts in this zither that were refined from the parts of Lan Wujiao's body. At this time, Yang Chun did not think at all and directly revealed part of what he knew. Is it these 2? The 2 Grand Supreme Experts each removed an item from the zither, a string and a string pillar. That's not a secret. You'll know as long as you take a closer look. The Supreme Expert behind him shook his head and denied. In that case, there are actually smaller items in the zither that are better concealed. Yang Chun did not refute. It would be abnormal if a Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal Expert could not even see the Lan Wujiao's tendon string and bone string pillar. Therefore, he immediately revealed another secret. They were refined from better materials. Dragon Whisker String and Dragon Bone String Pillar? The Grand Supreme Expert in front immediately shook his head. In the hands of the two people, there are also 2 strings and string pillars that Yang Chun had mentioned. 5 Dragon Whisker String and 4 Dragon Bone String Pillars from 9 zither. Together with the Lan Wujiao, there are 2 good zither. Yang Chun also knew that the Dragon Whisker String and the Dragon Bone String Pillar could not escape the eyes of a Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal. Therefore, he did not refute and only continued to speak. There are 2 zither hidden in 9 zither. Do you think our ancestors have nothing better to do? The Grand Supreme laughed coldly and said mockingly, "You only know these things. You can't exchange our Zhao clan secret. Then, what about the 9 locations hidden in the 9 zither?" A smile suddenly appeared on Yang Chen's face as he asked. It was as if he was not facing 2 experts who were about to kill him. "Where is it?" The Grand Elder at the back immediately asked. "The location where the 9 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal experts are sealed." Yang Chun did not have the slightest time to think. As soon as the Grand Supreme Expert asked, he immediately answered, "The Celestial Devouring Insect Queen from my sect is one of them." After seeing the Celestial Devouring Insect Queen just now, the two of them naturally knew how powerful it was. Their hearts were in turmoil. 9 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal Experts were a force that could not be ignored in any sect. Even if the Zhao clan had many experts, they could not help but be tempted. Whoever unlocks the sealed Supreme Mystic Immortal Expert, will listen to their orders. Yang Chun felt that the temptation wasn't deep enough, so he immediately added another sentence. "How do we know the location? How do we undo the seal?" The Grand Supreme Expert in front immediately asked. This time, Yang Chun did not answer straightforwardly. Instead, he shook his head slowly with a smile. The meaning was obvious. Everyone exchanged secrets for secrets. Yang Chun had already said half of it, and the Zhao clan had to say something too. "What do you want to know?" The Grand Supreme in front was not stupid. He naturally knew the principle of exchange and asked, "Where's the Zhao clan?" Yang Chun blurted out, and then added, "What is the Zhao clan's plot to create the Demon Continent? You want to know where my Zhao clan is?" The Grand Supreme in front sneered. "You won't be able to find it even if I tell you it is here today. Maybe when you go tomorrow, it is still not here. This question is meaningless." Upon hearing this, Yang Chun immediately thought of Longxian. Originally, the Zhao clan was on Longxian's back, wandering around. It could be said that they had no fixed residence. In this way, this question was indeed meaningless. As for the plot of my Zhao clan, the Grand Supreme in front hesitated for a moment, and then said, "If this old man says that the two of us don't know, do you believe it or not?" "I don't believe it." Yang Chun shook his head directly. What a joke. 2 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal Masters. Which sect or family wouldn't be the core of the core? Don't you even know what the family is going to do? Who are you trying to fool? The truth is, we really don't know. This time, even the Grand Supreme Expert in the back shook his head and smiled bitterly. There is no need for us to deceive you. The ancestor only said to cultivate in secret, and we will naturally know when we reach the immortal world. Not to mention that we don't know what the ancestor has arranged. We don't even know that the ancestor has sealed 9 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortal Masters. Looking at their posture, they really didn't know. As the two said, in the current situation, Yang Chun was already firmly controlled, and Yang Chen's life and death could be controlled at any time, so there was really no need for them to hide. "AI, your ancestor is really strange." Yang Chun sighed and could only say bitterly, "It seems that you really don't know. In that case, it's useless. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. I will accept this karma." Chapter 1765. What do you mean? Hearing Yang Chen's catchphrase, the 2 Supreme Mystic Immortal Experts of the Zhao family were confused. It was true that Yang Chun was an executioner. They had also seen these 2 sentences in their understanding of Yang Chen's experience, but they had never heard Yang Chen say it. However, this did not deny that they knew one thing, and that was that the guys who heard Yang Chun say this to them were all dead. If the current situation was Yang Chun having the upper hand, there would be no problem. He was meat on the chopping block, so it was normal for him to be killed. However, it was clearly not the case now. Two supreme mystic immortal experts were blocking a human immortal junior from the front and back, and this junior actually dared to talk nonsense? The first reaction after being surprised and puzzled was that the two supreme mystic immortal experts wanted to laugh. They had seen people who overestimated themselves, but they had never seen someone who overestimated themselves to such an extent. With a difference of 3 realms, it was simply a joke to rely on magic treasures or arrays to launch a sneak attack. However, Yang Chun used his actions to tell them that this was not a joke. A brown circular whip suddenly appeared in Yang Chen's hand. Even with the eyesight of the two supreme mystic immortals, they could not see how this soft whip suddenly appeared. Fortunately, the two of them had observed carefully enough and discovered that the quaint bracelet on Yang Chen's wrist had disappeared. Although they did not see the specific process of change, they were sure that this long whip should have been transformed from that bracelet. Yang Chen's goal was very clear. As soon as he made a move, the long whip swung towards the supreme mystic immortal expert in front of him. At the same time that the long whip was swung down, the figure of Xiao Tian also appeared in his other hand, and the shining blade of the immortal beheading saber was spat out from his mouth in an instant. Naturally, there would be someone to deal with the supreme mystic immortal expert behind him. After Yang Chun heard that familiar voice, Yang Chun did not doubt this at all. Sure enough, the sudden exclamation behind him had clearly indicated that the supreme mystic immortal expert behind him could not free his hands to deal with Yang Chun now. In other words, the only enemy that Yang Chun had to face was the one in front of him. Faced with Yang Chun's fiendish whip, the supreme expert didn't even look at it. His attention was still attracted by the figure behind Yang Chun. The Yang Chun in front of him was just a ringworm. A guy who could suddenly attack and make his companions flustered was the real trouble that needed some time to clean up. He should at least be a fairy immortal expert, right? However, his eyes and divine sense clearly told him that the fellow who had suddenly appeared was only a human immortal. How is this possible? How could a human immortal junior make his companions so flustered? If you weren't in the game, you couldn't imagine what it felt like to face an enemy. But at this time, Yang Chen's opponent still intuitively believed that this was his companion's playfulness and intended to play with Yang Chen's helper. This guess also gave him the attitude to deal with Yang Chen's attack. Since it was a game, he might as well play a little bigger and cooperate with his companion to make the two little guys happy. Did they really think that with just 2 human immortal juniors, they could really survive in front of 2 supreme mystic immortal experts? Since they had to put on a show, they naturally had to go all the way, otherwise they would lose the joy of watching a show. At this moment, Yang Chen's opponent had finished judging all this, then made a decision and began to enter the implementation stage. With just a thought, a black line that was so subtle that it was almost undetectable shot out from the supreme expert's hand and instantly pierced the brown whip that was about to hit his body. Immediately, the supreme expert let out a scream of horror, as if he was scared by the sudden change. His body was not so agile, and he could only watch the brown whip hit his head. Bang! The whip hit the supreme expert's arm that was clumsily waving to block himself. In the expectation of the great master, it should be that the soft whip had no more strength. It looked like it was smashing hard, but he should stand unscathed. Then he suddenly stopped screaming and straightened up as if nothing had happened. Looking at Yang Chun, who was shocked because of the sudden burst of the soft whip, he appreciated the change of his expression from the smugness of the sneak attack to the horror. This was the most wonderful part of the play. The magic treasure that looked like an embroidery needle would be the culprit that caused all these changes. The most powerful effect of the magic treasure that had been refined for thousands of years was that it could directly pierce through almost all the protective magic treasures in the world. Some magic treasures could block the smashing of a sledgehammer and the sharpness of a flying sword, but they could not block the sharp sting of a needle. Whether it was a protective magic treasure or an ordinary flying sword, once it was pierced by this penetrating bone needle, it would immediately destroy the internal structure of the magic treasure. After a long time, or a little more force was used, the magic treasure would be torn apart. If it was pierced into the body, As the name suggested, the penetrating bone needle would directly find and drill into the opponent's bones to absorb their bone marrow. Everything was calculated flawlessly, and these two human immortal juniors were just playthings in the palm of his hand. Just when the supreme expert had already determined the result and was waiting for the inevitable scene to appear, a sudden change occurred. Pa! The soft whip ruthlessly lashed at the Grand Supreme Expert's outstretched arm. A tremendous force like the weight of MT Tai hit his body. Before the Grand Supreme Expert could react, Kacha, his arm had already been bent into a twisted angle. The attack did not stop there. After being blocked by the Supreme Expert's arm, the head of the whip suddenly swung down and hit the Supreme Expert's face. At this moment, the Supreme Expert's face seemed to have been directly hit by Red Big Wolf's frying pan. His entire face became flat, and the Supreme Expert almost fainted from this huge force. He thought that this was the end, but he did not expect that in addition to the power of the whip, its weight was also an unbelievable number. Mount Tai? What was Mount Tai? If it was just Mount Tai, the Supreme Expert could lift 10 of them. However, the weight of this whip was directly unbearable for the Supreme Expert, and his entire body was smashed into the ground by the whip. Even though he was smashed into the ground at high speed, it felt like a cannonball being fired. The sharp pain in his arm and head, coupled with the dizziness caused by the whip, caused the Supreme Expert to not even be able to use Earth Escape. Relying on the strength of his body, he was smashed into the ground hundreds of feet deep. At Yang Chen's side, 12 almost identical towering trees suddenly appeared. As soon as they appeared, the 12 trees seemed to be alive, each moving in a fixed direction. In an instant, they formed a formation and suddenly exerted force. Chapter 1766. The 12 Yuanshan Sea Suppression Formation was originally used by Yang Chun for the Panlai Divine with Demon to guard the house. Now it was also suitable for this place. As soon as the Panlai Divine with Demon took root, the land within hundreds of miles became harder than iron and stone. Not to mention the Earth Escape, it was not easy to drill out of the ground. For so many years, the Panlai Divine with Demon had been practicing in the Dragon Palace. The spiritual pressure of the spiritual world was almost completely unadapted to the guys with the word divine in their name. In the past 200 years, the strength of the Panlai Divine with Demon could be said to have completely improved. The level of the 7th grade human immortal surpassed any genius in Yang Chen's family. This also made the power of the 12 Yuanshan Sea Suppression Formation directly improved to an incredible level. If it was used to guard the house, the Fairy Immortal Masters might not be able to win under their joint forces. The huge roots of the 12 Panlai Divine with Demons directly locked the Supreme Master underground. With just one force, the Supreme Master who had been rammed into the ground was shaken out again. The first blow of Yang Chen's soft whip was enough to make the Supreme Master dizzy and almost faint. He was rammed into the ground and was shaken out by the 12 Panlai Divine with Demons. He became more and more confused and almost had no power to resist. Yang Chen did not directly cut him off, but released all his wives and concubines. They had been anxious in the Dragon Palace for a long time. They could only see the situation outside, but they could not help. Now that they were outside, the women did not think about it and directly attacked the enemy of Yang Chen. The opportunity for a human immortal cultivator to attack a supreme mystic immortal master was simply unique. It was a rare opportunity for the women to improve their state of mind, accumulate experience, and cultivate their self-confidence. How could Yang Chen miss this opportunity? The fastest attack was Shi Shan Shan. A pure yang sword qi exhausted all the spiritual power of her body. Even if it was a supreme master, with some protective magic treasure instinctively protecting him, he was still penetrated by the sword qi. His left chest made a sound. A small hole opened, and blood flowed out of the wound. This sword qi also drained the spirit power of Shi Shan Shan's whole body. Her body was soft, but immediately her waist was tight, but she was held in Yang Chen's arms. The next woman's attack was not so sharp. The sound of clanking sounded, but the flying sword was blocked by the magic treasure. Even so, The light of the Supreme Master's body was also dimmed a lot. When Tao Junkie saw that her attack was ineffective, she immediately used her natal pure true fire to burn it without hesitation. After the continuous tempering of Tao Junkie's spiritual world, the 7th grade pure true fire was strengthened by Yang Chen's white flame and had risen to the 9th grade level. Even the purest fire cultivator would be flustered if their natal true fire wasn't the pure true fire. Not to mention that this Grand Elder wasn't a fire cultivator at all. In an instant, the Supreme Master was trapped in the flames. Even though he could barely maintain the flames without hurting him with his powerful strength, he didn't have the strength to fight back. Murong 5 elements formation. Yang Chun called out, and the Murong sisters answered in unison. The 5 of them split into 5 directions and surrounded the Grand Supreme Elite. They brought out the 5-element hooks, and with the support from the rune, they hooked his limbs and head in an incredibly unreasonable manner. Then, they pulled him in 5 different directions while he was covered in blood. When Sun Qingxue and Shi Wushuang saw this, their life source magic weapons immediately slashed down without caring about their lives. It didn't matter where it was, as long as he could hit it. Amidst the clanking sounds, the last bit of the Grand Supreme Expert's protective treasure light dimmed to the point where it could not be detected. When had a dignified Supreme Mystic Immortal Expert suffered such humiliation in front of a few human immortals? His limbs were spread open, and he couldn't move in the air as if he was being torn apart by 5 horses. He was burned by a little girl, and then beaten up by 2 other girls. It was simply humiliating. However, if he didn't have any way to fight back now, he would be killed by these girls and the 12 little tree monsters, not to mention feeling ashamed and resentful. If he had to blame someone, he could only blame Yang Chen's first attack for being so ruthless that he still hadn't recovered from it. One of his arms was broken, and there was a hole in his chest. It even hurt his heart a little. His limbs and head were hooked by the strange hooks of the 5 girls, and he couldn't move at all. His head was still the size of 2, and he couldn't react at all. It could be said that his life was in danger. The desire to survive made the Grand Supreme Expert struggle to fight back. In his heart, as long as he could launch a little attack, he could reverse this unfavorable situation. These little girls and the dozen or so little tree demons were definitely not his match. However, he was in a daze and had completely forgotten that in addition to these few enemies in his imagination, there was another great enemy present, and that was Yang Chun, who knocked him out with a whip. Seeing that the Grand Supreme Expert was about to struggle and attack, Yang Chun didn't miss the opportunity to whip again. This time, it bypassed the limbs and head and lashed between the Grand Supreme Expert's chest and abdomen. Pa! Kacha! The sound of the whip hitting the body was mixed with the sound of the sternum breaking again. This whip made the little bit of spiritual power that the Grand Supreme Expert had barely raised disappear immediately. At the same time, the magic treasure that protected his body was directly shattered. Normally, even 10 Mount Tai would not be able to bend his sternum at all, but now it was directly smashed. This time, the Grand Supreme Expert completely lost the ability to resist and completely became a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. If there were no accidents, these dozen or so human immortal children would be enough to send him to the Yellow Springs. Finally realizing that something was wrong, the Grand Supreme Expert felt a sense of fear for the first time in his life. For the first time in his life, he opened his mouth and asked his companion for help. "Save me." As if responding to his cry for help, a watermelon-sized object fell from the sky and landed right on the chest of the Grand Supreme Expert, who was being pulled up in the air, causing his already severely injured body to be hit even more heavily. When the Grand Supreme Expert took a closer look, he realized that this watermelon-sized object was actually his companion's 6th Sun Chief. At this moment, the eyes on his companion's head were still wide open, and the shocked expression on his face did not have time to change, as if he couldn't believe everything that had happened. His companion, who was also a Grand Supreme Xian Immortal Expert, was actually beheaded by a human Immortal Junior? How is this possible? However, the head was right in front of him, and other than despair, the Grand Supreme Expert had no other thoughts. He was planning to self-destruct and bring Yang Chen's family along with him before he died. But unfortunately, Yang Chen did not give him this opportunity. The immortal beheading saber slashed down mercilessly, and with a flash of the saber light, the head fell to the ground. Chapter 1767. Until Yang Chen's blood demon, vine, flying sword, and a Bai's body appeared and absorbed the blood of the two supreme mystic immortals at the scene, the women had not yet recovered from shock. The battle just now didn't count. They fought with all their strength. How could they care about other things? Now that the enemy's head had fallen to the ground, the women realized that they had just joined forces with their husband to kill a supreme mystic immortal master. Any one of these girls was basically an amazing cultivation genius. When they were in the mortal world, the number of enemies they had killed was not just counted in dozens or hundreds, but there had never been a time when they could not believe it like this. That was a supreme mystic immortal master, a great master who had surpassed the limit of the spiritual world. But he was killed by a few human immortal juniors? Although it seemed a little unfair to bully the weak, if the huge gap in strength of the other party was 3 realms higher than them, it still seemed so unreal to kill the enemy. That kind of shock was almost comparable to when Yang Chen killed a late Mahayana realm master when he was in the Foundation establishment stage. If it weren't for the enemy's body and head in front of them, the women would rather believe that this was a nightmare. It's a pity that if a supreme mystic immortal master wants to die, it's not easy to catch him alive. A familiar voice came from behind the women and passed into their ears. "Greetings, big brother." Hearing this familiar voice, the women no longer doubted what had just happened, and they all turned around and saluted respectfully. "Big brother." Yang Chen also called out with a smile. When facing the pursuit of 2 supreme mystic immortal masters, he calmly stopped to talk to the other party and killed them. And when fighting against the supreme mystic immortal, there was no one else but his sworn brother Li Cheng. It was Li Cheng who walked over while shaking his head. In the eyes of everyone, he was also just a human immortal level cultivator. However, Li Cheng alone blocked the supreme mystic immortal master and killed him. Even Yang Chen did not dare to have such extravagant hopes without the help of the Earth Dragon. "Well done." Li Cheng nodded at the girls and praised them. Strangely enough, with just a word of praise from Li Cheng, the women actually felt honored. It was very magical. "Oh, Palace Master Zhang Jiao and the elders." After greeting Li Cheng, Yang Chen was about to say something, but his face suddenly changed. There was also a supreme master and several fairy immortal masters on the side of the Chunyang Palace mountain gate. The master of the palace was definitely in danger. Li Cheng also knew the seriousness of the problem. He didn't say much and waved his hand. "Hurry up and go back to help." After saying that, Li Cheng used some unknown method, and the array flag released by the Zhao family supreme expert was in his hands. There were no more obstacles in front of everyone. Yang Chen didn't say anything and took the Penglai Divine Wood monster back to the Dragon Palace. At the same time, he also put away the bodies of the 2 supreme masters. He didn't have the time to check the loot. It was more important to rush back to the sect. "Don't panic. The other party didn't get the thing. They won't kill us immediately." Li Cheng saw that Yang Chen was a little anxious and opened his mouth to explain. The Puryang Palace also had the old bug, who should still be able to resist the attack of a master of the highest level. But the palace master Zhang Jiao and the others certainly couldn't resist a few celestial immortal masters. They didn't know what their situation was now. When he escaped before, he hated that he couldn't grow 4 legs. Now, when he went back, he was even more anxious than when he first escaped. In the end, this was Yang Chen's own self-blame. He thought that with the promise of the 5 major sect, at least in Linyangchuan, no one dared to deal with Chunyang Palace. This was Yang Chen's judgment error, and the price of this mistake was likely to be the price of blood paid by the master of the palace and several elders. The closer he got to Chunyang Palace, the calmer Yang Chen's face became, but everyone could see a huge wave that was being desperately suppressed from his face. Maybe things are not that bad, but you have to be mentally prepared. Looking at their husband's face, the women didn't dare to speak at this time. Only Li Cheng spoke. "I know." Yang Chen took a long breath, as if to exhale the resentment in his heart, and said calmly, This is my fault. If anything happens to the master of the palace, I will avenge them. At this point, it was useless to be anxious. He could only face the result with an almost cruel calm mood. Yang Chun was very clear about this. Hundreds of miles away, Yang Chun and his party noticed a battle over there. The battle between Old Bug and another Supreme Master was not over yet. The battle between the two Supreme Xian Immortals could almost be said to be a mess for hundreds of miles. No one knows me. I'll go in and see. Li Cheng directly dropped a sentence, then flashed out of the shuttle. And then everyone instantly lost track of Li Cheng. Whether it was spiritual awareness or the five senses, they could not detect any trace of him. Yang Chun thought about it, and then ordered the women back into the Dragon Palace. Yang Chun alone drove the shuttle and rushed directly from the underground to the center of the battle between Old Bug and his enemy. Old Bug's cultivation was slightly higher than the other party, but it was also higher by a limit. Between the two, there was still a situation of no victory or defeat. It became a war of attrition. What Yang Chun worried about was that after adding a few fairy immortals and earth immortals, maybe this balance would be broken. Soon, Yang Chun's spiritual awareness had already explored the situation over there. What made Yang Chun relieved was that he did not find any corpses. Whether it was the master of the palace, the elders, or the ordinary disciples of Chunyang Palace, there were no corpses. The only possibility was that they had been captured, not killed. Old Bug's situation was very bad. Facing multiple opponents, Old Bug had now fallen into a disadvantage. If he had not already tasted Yang Chen's yin-yang heaven-burning fire, maybe he would not have been able to persist until now. Fortunately, Yang Chun came back, and he was accompanied by a more powerful sworn brother, Li Cheng. You deal with a fairy immortal, I'll deal with the supreme. Do it. When Yang Chen's shuttle was close to the center of the battle, Li Cheng's voice sounded directly in Yang Chen's inner ear, like a commander in command. Yang Chun did not think about it. He rushed out of the ground with the Earth Dragon and directly smashed it towards the nearest fairy immortal master. The Earth Dragon itself was at the level of Xian Immortal, plus Yang Chen's huge force. The opponent only had time to sacrifice a protective magic weapon to resist, and was rolled up by the Earth Dragon. In the blink of an eye, no one knew where he flew. Only the sound of bones breaking was left on the scene. Chapter 1768. The sudden turn of events startled everyone in the battle. Immediately afterward, the expert who was fighting Elder Bug suddenly let out a scream of horror. He spat out a mouthful of blood that was dozens of meters high. He was severely injured. Without looking, Yang Chen knew that this must be Brother Li Cheng's move. As long as Brother Li Cheng made a move, let alone a Supreme Xian Immortal, it was estimated that another Supreme Xian Immortal would not be able to resist. What's more, there was also Elder Bug next to him who was almost as strong as him. Taking advantage of someone's weakness was the law of survival in the spiritual realm. No one would think that there was anything wrong with this, especially when it happened between the two sides who were fighting. The countless clones of Elder Bug swarmed up and directly surrounded the Supreme Xian Immortal, who was already bleeding and seriously injured. In the blink of an eye, the Supreme Xian Immortal turned into a round ball of fairy-devouring insects. A terrifying chewing sound came from the insect ball, making one's hair stand on end. The other fairy immortal who was cooperating with the Supreme Xian Immortal to attack Elder Bug was shocked. How did it suddenly become like this? He didn't understand what was going on and was scared by the situation in front of him. In a flash, the fairy immortal suddenly saw the figure of Yang Chun. At this moment, the fairy immortal immediately made a move that no one would have thought of. He directly took out a space magic weapon and shouted at Yang Chun, "Stop! Otherwise, I will kill your palace master and the elders." Obviously, this guy grasped Yang Chen's weakness and also knew what Yang Chun was most afraid of now. So he made the most correct response in time. His lightning decision saved his life. Yang Chen's figure suddenly stopped in place and no longer moved. The palace master and the elders were still alive, and even the disciples were still alive. This was excellent news for Yang Chun. However, now that they were all controlled by the fairy immortal master, this was a bit difficult to deal with. Killing this guy would be easy. Whether it was Old Bug, Li Chung, or even Yang Chun and his Earth Dragon, they could all kill him easily. However, it was extremely difficult to make this fellow not detonate that spatial magic treasure before he died. At the end of the day, he was a heavenly immortal expert, and he could do it with a thought. Yang Chen stopped, but Old Bug didn't stop chewing. A series of creepy noises came from the huge celestial devouring insect ball, and the celestial devouring insects moved from the inside to the outside from time to time. This scene could give a timid person countless nightmares. Make him stop too. Stop. The heaven immortal expert couldn't stand such a scene and almost screamed. Of course, it could not be ruled out that he wanted to save the supreme expert so that he could have one more helper on his side. Old Bug, let him go. Yang Chen looked at the hysterical heaven immortal expert and shouted. The celestial devouring insect ball immediately stopped squirming, and then all the celestial devouring insects flew away quickly and began to gather in another direction. After a while, the figure of Old Bug appeared. Looking at Old Bug's expression, it seemed that he was very dissatisfied, but the radiant aura on his face made no doubt that he had just been greatly nourished. The supreme expert who was wrapped in the celestial devouring insect ball was finally freed, but seeing his current appearance, the heaven immortal expert couldn't help but take a deep breath. In just such a short moment, the supreme elder that he was familiar with had turned into a skeleton, and even some of the bones were incomplete. Although he was still alive, he was no different from a dead person. Without flesh and blood, it would be impossible to recover in a short period of time unless he had cultivated a special cultivation method or had some powerful spirit medicine of the life and death physique. Yang Chun and Old Bug stared coldly at the heaven immortal expert with the spatial magic treasure. One of their eyes was filled with hatred, while the other was filled with desire. When Old Bug subconsciously wiped his mouth and swallowed a mouthful of saliva, the pressure he felt was even more frightening than facing death. Take out all of your dwelling god jade. The heaven immortal expert's voice was filled with madness. Take them all out. Otherwise, I will kill all of your disciples in Chunyang Palace right now. In the eyes of the heaven immortal expert, Yang Chun hesitated for a moment. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he threw out a cosmos bag without hesitation. Needless to say, this cosmos bag contained all the dwelling god jade he had asked for. Yang Chun valued the elders and disciples of his sect so much that he made the decision so quickly, which was beyond the heaven immortal expert's expectation. This made him ecstatic, and the fear he felt when he saw the supreme elder skeleton was greatly reduced. If he had known this would happen, he would not have gone through so much trouble. He could have found a chance to capture one or two of the senior members of Chunyang Palace, and he could have easily blackmailed Yang Chun. There was no need to go through so much trouble and send out the Supreme Elder. Now, one of the Supreme Elders had become a skeleton, and the other two had gone out to chase Yang Chun. Now that Yang Chun had returned, the two Supreme Elders were nowhere to be seen. No matter how he thought about it, the situation did not bode well for him. The heaven immortal expert rushed forward and grabbed the cosmos bag. With his spirit sense, he immediately saw what was inside. The whole cosmos bag was filled with jade, and it exuded a unique, unpleasant smell. Although he had not seen the dwelling god jade before, he could roughly tell what it was based on its characteristics. Step back, otherwise I will kill them. With the item in his hand, the heaven immortal expert glanced at the Supreme Elder and put him into the space treasure, and then threatened Yang Chun. His goal had been achieved. If he did not leave now, would he wait for the fairy-devouring insect queen to eat him into a skeleton? Yang Chun and the fairy-devouring insect queen seemed to be very obedient. Their figures retreated quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they had retreated a few miles away. The heaven immortal expert was overjoyed and turned to leave. If he did not leave now, when would he? However, after flying a few feet away, the heaven immortal expert noticed that something was wrong. Why did his body become much lighter? He looked down and was shocked to find that he did not see his body. What was going on? Suddenly, there was a coquettish laughter in his ears, and then the heaven immortal expert felt that he had stopped. His head turned back strangely, and then he saw the familiar headless corpse standing not far away. Fanghua, you came at the right time. Yang Chen's voice came. The Heaven Immortal expert only heard this sentence, and then he completely lost all consciousness. Chapter 1769. The Fairy Immortal Master, who had already lost his head, would never have thought that the scenes he had just seen of Yang Chen handing over the dwelling spirit jade and retreating without hesitation as required were all illusions. They were all things he wanted to see, not real. When the Fairy Immortal Master said threatening words, Yang Chen noticed a familiar aura. That was the aura of Old Hai, which Yang Chen had felt many times at Yin Yang Demon School. A little Fairy Immortal Jr., in the eyes of Old Hai, was not an opponent. Old Hai, who was at the level of the Supreme Mystic Immortal, could easily deal with this guy when he was alone. What he wanted him to see, what he wanted him to think was the situation. The one who came with Old Hai was, of course, Lady Fanghua of Yin Yang Demon School. Yang Chen told Old Hai to always protect Lady Fanghua. Wherever Lady Fanghua went, Old Hai would be there. Yang Chen did not even have to look to know that Lady Fanghua must be nearby. Since Old Hai took action, Yang Chen did not do anything and waited quietly. Sure enough, in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, this guy hit his head on Lady Fanghua's flying sword. Yang Chen flew forward and grabbed the space magic weapon in this guy's hand. He immediately wrapped it with his spiritual awareness, so that the other party could not use the last of his spiritual awareness to control the explosion. When the Fairy Immortal Master was completely dead, the spiritual awareness imprint completely dissipated. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness then penetrated in and took the space magic weapon as his own. The moment the spiritual awareness imprint was made, Yang Chen was completely relieved. In the space magic weapon, the Palace Master and several elders were there, but they were unconscious, but there was no danger to their lives. In addition, the disciples of Chunyang Palace who did not escape were all inside. In addition to the serious injuries at the beginning, they were basically knocked unconscious by the Grand Supreme Master. At this moment, Yang Chen was glad that the other party had used a Supreme Mystic Immortal expert from start. His spiritual consciousness jolted everyone except Yang Chen's family unconscious, which saved the other party a lot of trouble. Since they did not resist, there was naturally no need for them to start a massacre. They still wanted to use these people to threaten Yang Chen, so they did not kill them. If it wasn't for this, how could he have had the chance to be rescued? Unfortunately, the man who had been gnawed into a skeleton by Elder Bug did not manage to escape in the end. Even though he had been taken into a spatial treasure by his companion, he was still dead. In this way, Yang Chen's plan to catch a living person to know the details of the Zhao family was completely frustrated. By the way, aren't there a few other earthly immortals? Where did he go? Yang Chen suddenly remembered that after the other party made a move, in addition to the Supreme Master and the Fairy Immortal Master, there were also a few Earth Immortal Masters. At this time, he did not see a shadow, which was very strange. Those guys, I ate them early on, Elderbug said from the side. Of course, I picked the weak guys first. What a pity. Yang Chen had some regrets. At the beginning, the other party moved too fiercely. As soon as the three Supreme Masters made a move, Yang Chen turned around and fled. He did not have time to order Elderbug to keep a few people alive. Even if there was a chance at that time, Yang Chen would not ask Elderbug to take risks under the attack of a Supreme Master, two Fairy Immortals, and several Earth Immortals. In any case, the survival of his own people was the most important thing. As for the guy who had been smashed by Yang Chen could not think of any possibility of him being lucky. When he attacked, Yang Chen's mind was full of the idea of revenge for the Palace Master, but he did not think so much. After that, he felt regret. If he had known, he would have kept that guy alive. The Earth Dragon also quickly turned back. Sure enough, as Yang Chen expected, the Fairy Immortal Master had been used as a tonic in the belly of the Earth Dragon. It was impossible for the great Principal Golden Immortal to bring a dead guy back to life. At this point, the crisis of Chunyang Palace was completely resolved. Elder Bug, Elder Hai, and the Earth Dragon were three supreme Xian Immortal Masters. together with his sworn brother Li Cheng. This place was basically impregnable, and there was no need to worry about anything. Although this time the disciples of Chunyang Palace did not suffer much loss. The mountain gate of Chunyang Palace suffered a disaster. In the attack of the three supreme Xian Immortal Masters and the battle between Elder Bug and a supreme Xian Immortal, within 1,000 miles of the mountain gate, there was no complete building. It was completely turned into ruins. Fortunately, there were no indigenous people living in the spirit world. Otherwise, it would have led to the destruction of the people. The palace master and several elders were rescued one by one, and then the other disciples. After waking up, the people of Chunyang Palace looked at the ruins of the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. They were all silent. No one spoke. Their own mountain gate was destroyed. Even if everyone survived, it would be a heavy blow to the reputation of Chunyang Palace. It's good that the mountain gate is destroyed. Yang Chen's words almost made the disciples of Chunyang Palace jump up and curse. If it were not for Yang Chen's identity and prestige, someone would have already started to curse. What did it mean that it was destroyed? How could the Sex Mountain Gate allow people to be so contemptuous? This is just an earth immortal spirit vein. We will find a fairy immortal spirit vein and rebuild the mountain gate on it. Immediately after, Yang Chen's words made everyone's heavy mind immediately turn into expectation and hope. The young palace master had never lied. Since he said that he wanted to find a fairy immortal spirit vein to rebuild, he would definitely be able to find it. After appeasing the minds of the people of Chunyang Palace, the palace master began to receive Lady Fanghua in this simple environment. In any case, Lady Fanghua was originally a guest. When she was in the mortal world, everyone had a lot of cooperation. There was no need to contradict each other in the spiritual world. Moreover, this kind of cooperation had been planned for a long time. At least there was a little accident today. Yang Chen did not show up immediately, but released all his wives and concubines, and then let them immediately rush back to the sect and report to their respective sect what happened in Chunyang Palace today. The people of the 5 major sect had just patted their chests and made a promise. As a result, after their people left, this kind of thing happened before the tea was cold. The 5 major sect had to give an explanation to Chunyang Palace, right? This was not Yang Chen's deliberate provocation, but the Zhao family was really slapping the 5 major sect in the face, and it was one big slap after another. After the slap, they also put the faces of the 5 major sect into the dirty water and trampled on them fiercely. If the 5 major sect did not have an explanation for this matter, the 5 major sect would not want to have any cooperation with outsiders in the future. Not to mention cooperation, in the future, when the people of the 5 major sect went out, they did not know what kind of eyes they would have to face from other cultivators. It turned out that the 5 major sect were just playing with their words. Chapter 1770. It was not clear to Yang Chen how the 5 major sects would retaliate. At this time, it was better to settle the Chunyang Palace first. The huge mountain gate had become a ruin, and even the disciples did not know how to arrange it, let alone the guests who came to seek cooperation. Fortunately, he had just obtained a space magic weapon from the Zhao family's fairy immortal master, which was the one that was imprisoned after the master of the palace was in a coma. Yang Chen gave it to the master of the palace and temporarily settled the disciples of the Chunyang Palace. As for Lady Fanghua, who came to cooperate, it was handed over to Yang Chen to personally receive. As Yang Chen expected, the representatives sent by Yin Yang Demon School, in addition to Lady Fanghua, were the female disciples of Lady Fanghua, Yang Chen's maids, and Old Hai. Lady Fanghua was now the great elder of Yin Yang Demon School and was qualified to make some cooperation decisions on behalf of Yin Yang Demon School. In particular, Lady Fanghua was still the old man who had cooperated with the Chunyang Palace in the mortal world. It was appropriate to send her to discuss cooperation with the Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen. Old Hai must have followed Lady Fanghua. It was not known how many people in the Yin Yang Demon School were envious to the point of drooling. Such a master was so obedient. Lady Fanghua did not know what kind of dogshit luck she had. As for the maids of Yang Chen, on the surface, they were the disciples of Lady Fanghua. The master took the disciples out to gain experience and increase their knowledge. Did this still need a reason? The master of the palace had already negotiated with Lady Fanghua. This kind of cooperation had been done several times in the mortal world. In addition, the price tag had basically been negotiated with the 5 major sects. They were quite familiar with it. Next, Lady Fanghua and Yang Chun had a private discussion. Originally, this kind of thing should be avoided from Li Cheng, but to Li Cheng's surprise, Yang Chun did not intend to avoid him at all. What was even more outrageous was that Yang Chun brought him, Lady Fanghua's female disciples, and Grand Supreme Expert Elder Hai to the Dragon Palace. In an instant, Li Cheng understood many things. He couldn't help but pay more attention to Old Hai. Soon, he vaguely sensed a familiar aura from Old Hai. That was the scent of Yang Chen's divine sense in Old Hai's divine sense. When he thought of what Yang Chen had said to the 2 Grand Supreme Mystic Immortals of the Zhao clan, he basically immediately understood Old Hai's origins. When the 30 maids entered the Dragon Palace, it was as if they had returned home. They immediately began to disperse in a familiar manner. In Li Cheng's astonished gaze, a set of exquisite tea and snacks was placed on the table in a short while. Then, surrounded by the incense, Yang Chun, Li Cheng, and Lady Fanghua began to taste the names. As for the cooperation that Yin Yang Demon School wanted to discuss with Yang Chun, Lady Fanghua didn't even mention a word about it. Fanghua, this is Brother Li, my sworn brother. Come and greet him. Lady Fanghua served Yang Chun like a little wife. Yang Chun didn't treat her as an outsider and directly introduced Li Cheng to her. At the same time, she didn't forget the beautiful maids. You guys have also met Brother Li. Fanghua greets Brother Li. Lady Fanghua got up and greeted Li Cheng. This was the only person that Yang Chun had introduced to her other than Yang Chen's wives and concubines. Moreover, he was also Yang Chen's sworn brother. Lady Fanghua didn't dare to have the slightest neglect. Servant greets master. Lady Fanghua was so grand that the maids didn't dare to have the slightest neglect. They all showed up to pay their respects. Brother, these are my housekeeper and maids. What do you think? Yang Chun turned around and introduced Lady Fanghua and a group of maids to Li Cheng. Many flower-like beauties uniformly greeted as if they were serving an emperor. Even with Li Cheng's experience, he was stunned for a moment, but he immediately adapted. But soon, he understood Yang Chen's meaning. He couldn't help but shake his head at Yang Chun and sigh. I really don't know what to do with you. Li Cheng sighed. A jade slip appeared in his hand, and he directly handed it to the maid closest to him. This is a joint attack formation, the 28 constellation sky splitting formation. At least 28 people can use it. It doesn't matter if there are a few more. Your cultivation techniques are the same. This formation can also help you cultivate together. Cultivate more. Thank you, Master. A formation that could be used to cultivate together and was also a joint attack formation was definitely a good thing for the girls. The girls understood that this was a greeting gift from Brother Li Cheng and thanked him in unison. In addition, you can try to refine this thing together. Li Cheng took out a golden object and handed it to Lady Fanghua. If you can refine it in the spiritual realm, your cultivation will definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Yang Chun saw clearly that the golden object was a golden statue. But the strange thing was that this golden statue had no head. It was a headless golden statue. There was no tempting aura on it. It looked very ordinary. But since Li Cheng said so, it must be a good thing that was worth moving. Thank you, big brother. Lady Fanghua was an outstanding figure in the Demon Gate. Her eyesight was simply first class. Even if she couldn't see the preciousness of this thing, she knew that it was definitely not a simple thing for her lover to spend so much effort to get a greeting gift from Li Cheng. She immediately expressed her sincere gratitude. Forget it. If I don't give you some benefits, you will definitely not let me go easily, Li Cheng said with a slightly bitter smile. Hurry up and send up the delicious food and drinks. Let me make up for the heartache of giving away such a good thing. The girls burst into laughter and then immediately got busy. After a while, a table of dishes was placed on the big table in front of Yang Chun and Li Cheng. Lady Fanghua personally served the two of them. Obviously, Li Cheng was a person who had seen the world. At least when facing those in front of him, he did not have the intention to eat the chopsticks rashly. Until the delicious main course was on the table, they began to slowly taste it under the service of the two maids. A delicious meal made Li Qingye eat a lot of praise, which was absolutely different from the kind of delicious food of Gong Sunling. It seemed that Li Cheng had not enjoyed such an atmosphere for a long time, and he was a little emotional. Yangsha did not say much. After removing the dishes, the two of them found a comfortable place to lie down and enjoy a relaxed and comfortable after-meal tea. Lady Fanghua and the maids were very discerning and did not come over, leaving the space for Yang Chun and Li Cheng. You haven't told them about the heavenly zither fairy? Li Cheng stared at the dome of the Dragon Palace and asked casually. Chapter 1771. Not yet. Yang Chun let out a long sigh and turned to look at Li Cheng. He complained, Big brother, why did you suddenly push a beauty over? Do you think I don't have enough troubles? This is different. Li Cheng replied without thinking. I believe you can see that she has a powerful background. If you had made it public earlier, maybe this attack wouldn't have happened. He didn't know how Li Cheng came to this conclusion. Yang Chun thought for a long time in his mind, but he couldn't remember how much power Grandma Tianqin had in the spiritual world. It was because he was chased like a stray dog at that time, or would he have more leisure time to care about others? However, Li Cheng must have his reasons for saying so. Yang Chun didn't refute, nor would he doubt it. So far, Big Brother Li Cheng had never told a lie, at least not to Yang Chun. Let's wait for Ayu to come back and let her decide. Yang Chun sighed. Originally, it was the happiest thing for him to be able to see his master again in this life and become a disciple of his master. In the end, not only did his master become his wife, but she also had a lot of beautiful wives and concubines. This matter was completely out of Yang Chen's control. Where did you get another one for the Dragon Palace? Of course, Li Cheng's eyes were sharp. When he entered the Dragon Palace, he saw the changes at first glance. He didn't ask until now. Yang Chun told the story of Wang Dongzhu and also said the experience of Ao Lai. The origin of the Dragon Palace was naturally explained clearly. Li Cheng listened with relish. Even he had to admit that Yang Chun didn't live a very ordinary life these days. It was completely different from the boring life of refining elixirs in the eyes of others. Speaking of the Dragon Palace, Yang Chun thought of the dragon essence and dragon soul fragrance that he obtained in the Dragon Palace, as well as the spiritual pills that he refined later. One of the spiritual pills was originally prepared for Li Cheng. Yang Chun also took this opportunity to take it out and pass it to Li Cheng. I refined it myself. Big bro, take a look and see what level it is. When Yang Chun took the divine pill, he didn't mention what it was at all. He believed that with Li Cheng's insight, he would definitely know what it was. Good stuff. Li Cheng took it and examined it carefully for a while, then immediately sighed in admiration. He stared at the spiritual pill up and down and said, You actually found dragon soul fragrance. This is something you can't find even with a lantern. What is this? Jade? Top-rate Yellow Springs jade, Perching God jade, right? You used dragon soul incense and divine dwelling jade to refine this pill? He even used the methods of the merit chapter? Apart from a name Yang Chun came up with, the rest of Li Cheng's words were all correct. It could be said that he had seen it with his own eyes, and there was not the slightest error. At this time, other than nodding continuously, what else could Yang Chun say? For me, Li Cheng was slightly surprised. He held the spiritual pill in his hand and asked in return, There isn't much dragon soul fragrance, so there aren't many of them refined. Big bro, you can only take one. Yang Chun nodded again and explained the quantity himself so that Li Cheng wouldn't have any bad ideas. This gift is very valuable. Even with Li Cheng's wealth, he couldn't help but want to cry and laugh when he held this spiritual pill. Dragon soul fragrance is such a valuable thing. Even the old dragons in the immortal world don't have many. This time, I really got a great bargain. What's there to say about whether it's valuable or not? It's a waste if you don't use it. Yang Chun didn't have any intention of taking out anything valuable at all. This was just a gift between brothers. He didn't think of it as a big gift at all. If Big Bro says that, then how can I return the things you gave to my sisters-in-law? That's true. Li Cheng was more open-minded than Yang Chen in some aspects, and immediately accepted this fact. With this, I'm afraid it's not one more life. Where are you keeping them? What Li Cheng asked was, of course, the place where Yang Chen kept the divine pills that he had entrusted to his life source primordial spirit. There, Yang Chen pointed to the dragon tower where Xiao Tian stayed and replied, "In the tower, it's relatively safe. Even if there's any trouble, there's enough nourishment here." Well, I'll put this one in too. Li Cheng didn't have a general trust in Yang Chen and made a decision in the blink of an eye. For an expert of Li Cheng's level, it was simply a piece of cake to entrust the spiritual pill. It was completed in a short while, and he handed the spiritual pill to Yang Chen. Yang Chen didn't say anything and gave Xiao Tian a thought. Xiao Tian immediately naughtily poked his head out of the dragon tower. The tail was still in the dragon tower, but the big head had already stretched to Yang Chen's side. He held Li Cheng's spiritual pill in his mouth and quickly retracted into the dragon tower. You're lucky to find this kind of dragon in the mortal world. Looking at the huge figure of Xiao Tian, Li Cheng didn't have any surprise. Watching Xiao Tian put his spiritual pill in the dragon tower, he seemed to find it funny and smiled slightly. After resting for a while, Li Cheng suddenly asked, "Now your 9 ancient zither should be collected, right?" Not long ago, the 2 masters of the Zhao family who were killed by Yang Chen and Li Cheng had 2 ancient zither in their hands. In addition to the 7 that Yang Chen had obtained before, all the 9 ancient zither that Yang Chen knew had fallen into the hands of Yang Chen. He didn't know how Li Cheng knew that all the other ancient zither had fallen into the hands of Yang Chen, but Yang Chen obviously wouldn't hide this issue from Li Cheng and nodded straightforwardly. In other words, there may be 9 great masters sealed. Li Cheng asked immediately. This was what he knew from Yang Chen's mouth. Yang Chen nodded again. If his guess was right, it should be like this. However, in order to verify it, Yang Chen still took out the 2 newly obtained ancient zither, and then played the songs on the 2 ancient zither, and there were 2 more places in his mind. Let Junqi and Wushuang unlock the seals on these 2 zither. Yang Chen was very assured of Li Cheng, and even set his own plans. What about your 5 concubines? What are you going to do? Li Cheng looked at Yang Chen with a smile, and seemed to have guessed his plan. He asked calmly, in addition, how are you going to explain it to Fairy Tianqin? This was also the place where Yang Chen had a headache. 4 wives, plus Tao Junqi and Shi Wushuang. Each had a great master. Even Lady Fanghua had one by her side. The only ones left were the Murong sisters and Zhou Xianying. If there was only one left, it would be fine. Yang Chen could give the earth dragon to her, so that he wouldn't look biased, but there were 6 left, and one of them was the one who gave his ancient zither, which was very difficult. Chapter 1772. There are 5 dragon whisker strings and 4 dragon bone string pillars in the 9 zither. Yang Chen said, while skillfully removing the strings and string pillars from the 2 ancient zither. The strings and string pillars are for the heavenly zither fairy. I believe she should like it. By the way, big brother, she has changed her name to Fairy Soft Sound. Don't call her by the wrong name next time. Heavenly Phoenix zither with dragon whisker strings and dragon bone string pillars. Li Cheng thought about the combination and nodded. If it's refined well, it should be a good zither. It could be ranked as a 9th grade zither. Big brother, don't think about staying idle. You must be the one to refine it. Yang Chen put Li Cheng, this great master, without using him. He directly set his own plans and was not polite to Li Cheng at all. All right. Li Cheng agreed very readily and did not decline at all. There was no need for so many excuses between brothers. But Li Cheng immediately asked, how do you plan to appease the Murong sisters? I don't know yet. Yang Chen really didn't think about it, but Yang Chen didn't want to be biased. So he immediately asked Li Cheng, big brother, do you have any ideas? Why do you think the ancestors of the Zhao family sealed 9 supreme mystic immortals for no reason? Li Cheng didn't answer Yang Chen's question directly this time. Instead, he asked in a mysterious way, with these 9 supreme mystic immortals, why couldn't they do anything in the spiritual realm? Why do they have to seal them? The Zhao family is too mysterious. I can't see through them. Yang Chun frowned. He thought about the information he got about the Zhao family in the spiritual realm and couldn't help but shake his head. In order to seal these 9 supreme mystic immortals, they have to first find 9 fairy immortal spirit veins. Even if there isn't a fairy immortal spirit vein, they have to use a formation to gather the spiritual power of the surrounding spirit veins to achieve the effect of a fairy immortal spirit vein. It's strange. What Yang Chun said was the spiritual vein of the Gourd Valley, where Old Chun was sealed. That spiritual vein itself was not a celestial immortal spiritual vein. It was simply the convergence of several spiritual veins around it. It was achieved with a brilliant formation to achieve the effect of a celestial immortal spiritual vein. Yang Chun couldn't figure out why. Gathering the surrounding spirit veins would definitely cause some loss of spiritual power. Why didn't they do it on one of the Earth immortal spirit veins? That way, the loss of spiritual power would be smaller. Unless that location is very important and must be there. Li Cheng had already given his judgment before Yang Chun could. In fact, according to Yang Chen's deduction, this might be the only explanation. Otherwise, there was no other explanation for the spiritual vein in the Gourd Cave. Where is Gourd Cave? Yang Chun thought about the location of the Gourd Cove, but he couldn't figure it out. Do I have to look at the 9 locations together? Although Yang Chun had a certain understanding of the spiritual realm, Yang Chun didn't have an accurate map of the spiritual realm. If Gong Sunling was here, it would be fine. Yang Chun could take Gong Sunling to various places and record all the locations. Then, he could directly see the connection of the 9 locations in the Mountain River geographical map. But now, if Yang Chun only relied on his brain to think, he couldn't find any pattern at all. Tell us all the 9 locations, and we will analyze them. Li Chun was excited. The connection of the 9 locations might be able to unlock the reason why the Zhao family sealed so many masters. No matter what, he had to investigate it. Let's wait for Ah Ling to come back and use the Mountain River geographical map. Yang Chun was interrupted by Li Cheng. Why bother? It seems that you still don't know the use of this map of the Dragon Palace. Li Cheng directly stopped Yang Chen's words, jumped up, and went straight to the Dragon Tower. Let Xiao Tian merge the sea map and the fire vein map together. Li Cheng ordered while giving Yang Chun a jade slip. Yang Chun took it and scanned it with his spiritual awareness. It turned out to be a refining method. With this refining method, the 2 maps should be able to be easily merged together without interfering with each other. The things of the Dragon Clan, even the Dragon Tower, did not have such an inheritance. Li Cheng could actually take it out casually. This could no longer be described as mysterious. If one had to compare the degree of mystery, Yang Chun believed that the elder brother, Li Cheng, in front of him could throw the Zhao family by 8 streets. Who had ever seen a cultivator with a human immortal cultivation base who could single-handedly cut off the head of a supreme, profound immortal master? Even Yang Chun was barely able to do it with the help of the Earth Dragon, and it was because he knew that Li Cheng was behind him that he dared to do so with confidence. But Li Cheng did it all by himself, and now he took out a certain refining method of the Dragon Clan. Whoever dared to say that Li Cheng was not mysterious was absolutely without eyes and brains. Xiao Tian was called out, and then began to merge the sea map and the fire vein map according to the records on the jade slip. Yang Chun explained the locations recorded on the 9 ancient zither to Li Cheng one by one. Next, there was nothing for Yang Chun, and Yang Chun was directly driven away by Li Cheng. There's nothing for you to do. You go and enjoy with your chief maid. Li Cheng made a comfortable chair and sat on the edge of the Dragon Tower, supervising Xiao Tian's fusion of the 2 maps. And, at the same time, he was thinking about the connection of the 9 locations. Remember to send the delicious food and drinks on time. When Li Cheng spoke, he didn't treat himself as an outsider at all, as if he was the master of the Dragon Palace. Meeting such a big brother, Yang Chun had no choice but to leave resentfully. Anyway, there were a lot of things to do next, and Yang Chun also needed to deal with it carefully. But before getting busy, Yang Chun first called Lady Fanghua and a group of maids together. Each maid had a piece of dwelling spirit jade, and let them refine their own life source primordial spirit. Lady Fanghua got a spirit pill. The girls spent more than a day to leave their own life source primordial spirit in the Dragon Tower. Everyone understood the preciousness of the dwelling spirit jade, and Yang Chun gave one to each of them without thinking about it. This affection moved the girls to tears, making Yang Chun feel a little embarrassed. There was no need to be so excited about their own people taking a few pieces of yellow spring jade that no one in the mortal world wanted. The cooperation between Yin Yang Demon School and Chunyang Palace and Yang Chun could basically be settled without much discussion. It was completely in accordance with the standards of the 5 major sects. In the future, other major sects would come with the same conditions, and no one would be offended. Anyway, Lady Fanghua was doing things for the sect. Yang Chun didn't have to take his own things to please Yin Yang Demon School, as long as Lady Fanghua and the maids were happy. Unfortunately, Lady Fanghua couldn't stay long this time. At most, she would leave after a few days. The gate of Chunyang Palace was destroyed. Whether it was revenge or rebuilding the gate, it was not something that Lady Fanghua could directly intervene. The girls reluctantly left Chunyang Palace. Yang Chen also began to discuss the location of the new gate of Chunyang Palace with the head of the palace.